Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching second and final part of What If Naruto Awakens Golden Wind Chakra during Chunin exams. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Konoha. Most things in Konoha were beginning to look up. Okay, so in reality, 98% of the populace was returning to their regular jobs at this point. All except a few individuals who had misplaced family members and shops, etc. Team 7 was involved in this as well. They had unexpectedly lost a team member. One might now consider replacing that team member, but it would take 2 months for a new batch of genin to be released. Sakura and Sasuke did not receive a Chunin vest, despite Sandaime having already distributed them. Naruto actually owned the last Chunin vest that was left, but he had vanished without warning. To be ready to defend the borders, in case something happened, the other teams were now undergoing intense training. Group 7. Naruto was now seated at his favorite store, or what was left of Team 7. Since Naruto wasn't with them, it was evidently ironic. However, you had to feel bad for Team 7 because after losing a member, all of their training sessions became more one-on-one, and missions got harder because you were left without an extra hand, or several, since Naruto frequently used cage bunshin. Sakura was a jumble of tension. She was confused about why Naruto had left, wondering if she should ask to be transferred to a new team, and Sasuke, her sensei, and her all acting sad about it. Team 7, waiting for their order at the stand, turned around and exclaimed, "Oi, look who's here." There they were, looking at them in surprise, Team 8 and Team 9. Kiba had smirked after calling out in a surprised voice. Kiba said, a little bewildered, "Hey, so looks like the rookie 9 is all. Where's Naruto?" Kurenai glanced at Kakashi and then Asuma, and they both gave a nod. In response, Kakashi told Kiba, Naruto left the team. Kiba's features quickly schooled after his eyes widened. Shikamaru's eyes narrowed instead of widening, and he began scrutinizing everything right away to figure out why Naruto had left. After all, it didn't take a genius to care about a friend. Hinata gasped, Shino raised an eyebrow, Ino gave up trying to flirt with Sasuke, and Choji nearly dropped his bag of chips. At that point, Kiba began to joke around, assuming it was a practical joke. So did he leave cause it was too much pressure? I mean, come on, this is Naruto we're talking about here. Kiba answered, but there was only silence in response. Many of the genins were asking Team 7 a lot of questions after learning this. Why did he leave? Did he quit being a ninja? Where is he? How long since he has left? Is he going to come back? Are you guys going to get a new team member? Kurenai spoke loudly, clearing her throat. That is enough. The genin halted at the command and cast an expectant glance at Kurenai, demanding explanations. Kurenai turned to face Kakashi to check on him. Kakashi gave a nod. Kurenai turned to look at the genin then and spoke. I was informed by Hokage Sama that Naruto was promoted to Chunin and was taken under the apprentice of Jiraiya, one of the Sannin. A pause occurred. Next, though. Kurenai eventually got the irate civilians and Junins to quiet down after much yelling. He left Team 7 for quite a while, and is now with Jiraiya. I don't know where he is though, so don't bother trying to look at him. Kiba gave a headshake. There is no way an idiot like Naruto could be an apprentice of one of the Sannin. With a headshake, Sasuke muttered. Nope, he's pretty strong. When Kiba heard it, she sadly turned to face Sasuke. What was that, Sasuke? With a blink, Sasuke looked up. Naruto's pretty strong. Shikamaru moved up front. And you know this? Shikamaru asked, not discounting Naruto's strength, but asking why Sasuke would recognize Naruto. When Shikamaru first met Sasuke, he thought the man was a conceited bastard with a massive pride. And it was as if the Sandaime were wearing pink boxers when he recognized someone. Sasuke turned away from them, ignoring them. As he turned to leave, Sasuke remarked, I'm going home, sensei. He required additional strength. He was really frail. He required power immediately, not later. He had to use everything. However, how? How could he quickly acquire power? Glaring after him was Shikamaru. I have to look into this. It's troublesome. While this was going on, Hinata was in the background, analyzing the significance of the conversation. If Naruto had been gone for a while, then when she spoke with him, he had to be a member of the team. However, if that were the case, then he appeared to be much happier, or at least that was her interpretation. Tsunade. Tsunade had gone upstairs to get some breakfast, and the next thing she knew it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. She went upstairs to check on the kid's arm, and although she had seen it in action yesterday, she was wondering about that insane version of the Rasengan. The brat was late. Well, okay, he was sleeping off his fight with Kabuto. She, herself, had slept later than normal. It looked more like a cannonball than a sphere. Tsunade had originally thought that the chakra pathway was overloaded with chakra from the growth, but that was impossible, or at least very unlikely, so she decided to investigate. Tsunade opened the door soundlessly and saw the boy still sleeping soundly, with both of his arms neatly tucked under the bed like he was in a coffin, his headband on the old wooden dresser to his right, and his equipment and scrolls haphazardly stacked in a mountain formation on a chair. Tsunade went over to his bed and took his left arm out from under the covers. Tsunade pushed Chakra in to see how it responded, and she felt a rising jolt. What the hell was that? Tsunade thought. That chakra was too powerful to be regular chakra, and it wasn't the Kyuubi's for sure. Tsunade moved forward again and this time touched Naruto's chest, right below the neckbone. This was a major conduit that many medics used to measure the chakra beat. If the chakra beat was extremely low, then they would have to start a chakra transfer. It was similar to a pulse, but it also told you how strong their chakra is, how much is left, and how much chakra the person had before. Tsunade placed her hand on the chest and sent a wave of chakra into his chest, but holding it there so she could see how Naruto's chakra reacts. Once again the chakra was jolted by a huge potency. Tsunade pulled back to avoid another shock. I've never seen this kind of potency before. But how? It's practically flooding Naruto's chakra system. Signs would have shown this chakra rising. Then it clicked. The wind techniques, the Judgment Rasengan, all of it was powered by this hyper chakra. Tsunade bit her lip. Jiraiya must know about this. Naruto was getting agitated. Ugh. Pulling back her hand, Tsunade peered down at Naruto, who was just beginning to stir. With a sly smile, Tsunade said, "Hey brat, get up, you've been sleeping all day." Gradually, languidly, Naruto stood up and said, Hi Tsunade. Sama. Sama? Tsunade asked, eyebrow raised. You said you would be my Hokage, right? Naruto grinned back at her. Naruto blinked. Tsunade nodded, then noticed something about his eyes. She studied what was in front of her, her expression straight, and found that Naruto's eyes had turned golden. When Naruto noticed that she was tense, he blinked again and, without realizing it, his golden chakra disappeared, returning his eyes to their normal blue color. What's wrong? Nothing. Tsunade shook his head. Get up and do some light exercises with your arm since you need to get some muscle memory back. Just don't overextend yourself, your arm is still healing. Tsunade turned away and began to walk towards the door. With a salute, Naruto said, Yes, ma'am. Tsunade laughed and turned to leave. As soon as she was outside, she went to the Red District in search of Jiraiya. Later. So. Why did you call me here? Jiraiya asked. It was precisely 10 o'clock when Tsunade discovered Jiraiya at work in a cafe outside the Red District, penning multiple techniques into a scroll. Tsunade then pulled Jiraiya in the direction of a bar. I looked at Naruto's arm and found something interesting, Tsunade sighed. So did she find out? Jiraiya asked, her eyes ever so slightly widening. And what did you find interesting about it? Tsunade sipped from her sake. His chakra, it's totally different from anything I've encountered. What's even stranger is that I found not only that chakra but a lesser one. One that fits the normal potency of a nin. Tsunade took a sip before she continued. Normally I would just scratch that out as the fucking fox's chakra, but I don't think so. If he had that much yokai in his system, he would be turning red any minute now. There was a moment of silence. Jiraiya knew Tsunade was just waiting for a response, and Tsunade knew Jiraiya knew what she was talking about. Tsunade made the decision to ask anyhow. What is this hyper chakra? And why does Naruto have more of it than regular chakra? Jiraiya sighed deeply. The hyper chakra is a development that was predicted by Sensei and my other student. Tsunade gave him a nod to carry on. Naruto's seal is purifying the Kyuubi's chakra, leaving extremely powerful chakra but with no malice or degrading effects. The only problem was is that Sandaime never expected it to start right away. And the hyper chakra is slowly raising in quantity, past the normal chakra since it is so potent and harder to use up. Tsunade gave Jiraiya a perplexed look. Well, if that's true, shouldn't it just be controlled through Naruto's regular chakra? When I checked his major chakra vein, it seemed like his hyper chakra is the dominant chakra. Jiraiya replied, actually it's true, in the future Naruto will only be able to use the hyper chakra. With wide eyes, Tsunade whipped her head in Jiraiya's direction. What? But shouldn't his chakra coils produce the regular chakra? Jiraiya sighed again. It would have if the purification process happened before Naruto's chakra coil developed. In truth, it will be only a matter of time till Naruto's chakra coils start to produce the hyper chakra on its own close to or at the same rate as the Kyuubi's purification, which I might add is pretty damn fast. Tsunade gave a nod. Good for him. Looks like he'll be the next Yond. Perhaps, Jiraiya uttered meekly. Why? Shouldn't having massive amounts of hyper chakra be good? Tsunade asked him, giving him a strange look. Jiraiya gave a nod. That would be good if he could use it to produce any other jutsu but wind chakra. Tsunade stopped. What do you mean? Looking as though he was too exhausted to hold his hand up, Jiraiya rested his head on it. His hyper chakra naturally transfers to wind chakra, so the potency of the chakra won't spontaneously combust his body. Tsunade didn't notice that Jiraiya's grip broke the sake cup because she was fixated on her. So, there was a side affect. Jiraiya gave a shrug. It'll get worse as it goes on. As he uses the hyper chakra more and more, he will lose even the basic techniques like henge since his chakra is just too strong to form the techniques. He'll literally overpower them. Tsunade furrowed her brow. Then how does he control the chakra for the wind techniques? Jiraiya gave a nod. His body automatically mediates it as long as he is in Golden Eyes state. Golden Eyes state? His eyes turn gold when he uses the hyper chakra. In minute notes, the chakra goes to his eyes and changes it to gold while speeding up his reaction. Tsunade rubbed her temples, sighing. So, he can only use wind chakra. Jiraiya gave a nod. And if he ever fights a fire user again, he has to be prepared. Tsunade clenched her jaw. You certainly don't want to hear this kind of news about the person who helped you recover from depression. So, is there any way for Naruto to prepare against a fire user? Yep, there is, I know. A guy who specializes in the wind arts, exclusively, Jiraiya grinned in response. Tsunade gave a nod. When can you take him? Jiraiya gave a shrug. Depends, I need to talk to sensei first. Tsunade gave him a perplexed look. Why? Jiraiya gave a shrug. I need permission, it's complicated. Tsunade gave a nod. It would be alright if it had been sensei. The greatest strategist of his era was sensei. The following morning. From the bottom of the hotel, Jiraiya called out, Oi brat, come on, we need to hurry up. Coming right down, was the last thing Naruto said before leaping out of the window and landing softly in front of Jiraiya. Shizune and Tsunade grinned at Naruto. With a cheerful wave, Naruto said, let's go. They all set out to walk in Konoha's direction. Konoha. Cage Tower. Now the Sandaime smoked his pipe while seated at his desk. Now that he had completed all the paperwork, he was reflecting carefully. He had been making plans for the past few weeks, but they weren't for retirement. Rather, they were for a master plan. He would only ever make one plan, and that would be to die. After smoking his pipe for 4 more minutes, the Sandaime considered who should be part of the plan. He decided that there could only be 3 people, including himself. Sarutobi took out a very old scroll from a drawer. Jiraiya would shortly be requesting this. It would require permission for Naruto to enter that area. It was most likely the only location that could help Naruto reach his destination. The Sandaime pulled his pipe out and set it aside. He now needed to determine how long he ought to live. Grounds of the Hyuga clan. Hyuga Hiyashi was a perceptive individual. It was clear with the Byakugan, of course, but this wasn't about him. It was about his daughter. In actuality, he was highly intrigued by her change. She was starting to gain confidence. She has been out late every night since the invasion ended. She has also started speaking up more and gained a little more confidence in her abilities. Hiyashi initially believed it had to do with the war, but since she was going out frequently, it appeared that she was spending time with someone or something. For the time being, he would not interfere with her life because it was beneficial to her. Gates of Konoha. There were several persons at the gates. Why? For a few reasons, really. One was that the Sandaime had guards on duty and genins to assist with registration. It was getting close to the right moment to enter the market. With the exception of the Kyubi festival, which is in a few months, it was actually one of the best months of the year. A sizable crowd attended. Team 8 was here that day by coincidence. They worked the early shift, and they would be replaced by another genin team. Fortunately or unfortunately, Team 8 was assigned to a very empty day. Seldom did anyone arrive at the location to start the day. Hinata sighed. It had been a while since she'd seen Kira or Naruto. It was awful. With another sigh, Hinata rested her hand on her hand and rested her elbow on the desk. This is dull. A few chuckles came from the person next to her. Turning, Hinata saw her teammates laughing at her. Hinata blushed, embarrassed, and stammered out. What is wrong? Shrugging his shoulders, Shino said, you said all of our thoughts out loud. Hinata reddened. I said that out loud. Kurenai gave a nod. Yes, she replied with a smile, but is it because of someone in particular? Hinata reddened intensely. For some reason, Hinata thought of both Kira and Naruto even though Kurenai was actually referring to Naruto. Hi. The Chunin perched atop the wall looked down with some confusion as there was a cacophonous roar of laughter at the desk. Oi brat. What the heck did I say about practicing FUUTON jutsus while we're walking? You said I should practice every change I get sensei. I know, but you don't have to go overachiever on me and make me RPOUD. Oi, can't I just freaking practice in peace? Shut up both of you. There were two painful smacks and groans. At the sound of the yelling, Kiba became alert and exclaimed, Hey, that's Naruto's voice. Without any delay, Hinata stood up and hurriedly began to remove the imaginary dust from her clothes and her hair from her face. Kurenai observed the girl who reminded her of her daughter enjoying a brief moment with her boyfriend. As Team 8 turned to look, they noticed an odd group approaching. Given that they were both massaging an extremely tender spot on their heads, did Jiraiya appear to be just as irate as Naruto in front of him? Walking beside them was a stunning blonde who was busy berating the two for being moronish and such. At last, following at a safe distance, came a young black-haired woman with short hair who appeared a little worried and who was holding a pig in her arms. Hinata smiled brightly at Naruto, who was giving the lady a stern look while frowning with his mouth. At that moment, Naruto met Hinata's gaze as he peered at the gates. Naruto's eyes grew wide with delight and surprise. With a joyful wave of his hands, Naruto took the blonde woman by the hand and pulled her in her direction. Watch it, Naruto, exclaimed the blonde woman. Ignoring, Naruto continued running until he came across Team 8, who were positively bewildered. Naruto grinned broadly. Hey Hinata. Chan. With a slight blush, Hinata returned the smile. Hi Naruto. Kun. With a smile, Naruto turned to face the woman. Tsunade. Sama, this is Hinata. Chan, and her team. Kurenai's gaze grew wide. Tsunade, as in Sanin Tsunade. Kurenai moved forward and made a small bow. Tsunade-sama, it is an honor. My name is Kurenai Yuhi. This is my team Inuzaku Kiba, Abrune Shino, and Hyuga Hinata. Tsunade grinned in return. Pleasure. Naruto, you're back. When the teams turned around, they saw Team 9 staring at the scene with wide eyes. Naruto gave them a friendly wave. Hey guys. Come here, I want you to meet the new Hokage. Team 9 gave a blink. You mean? Not even did Naruto allow them to finish. Tsunade. Sama is our Godem. Now, everyone in the vicinity was taken aback. They heard nothing about Hokage. Sama's retirement plans. Tsunade was greeted by Team 9. Each of them was greeted by Tsunade, and they struck up a casual conversation. When Naruto turned to look for Jiraiya, he was shocked and suspicious to see that Jiraiya had vanished, leaving Shizune and the pig alone. Well, perhaps he visited Sandaime. Naruto, you're back. Hinata gave her, crush, a startled look, and Naruto froze, his face suddenly cold, unfriendly, and indifferent. Naruto then cautiously turned to face Team 7, the new source of nins. What would you like? They all stopped talking and just stared at Naruto, who they had never seen before, Naruto said in a chilly voice. After greeting him initially, Sakura became enraged at his lack of warmth and went up to try to punch him while yelling, "Is this how you treat us?" Sakura went to her knees in agony as Naruto grabbed and twisted her hand, causing many genins to gasp and the Junin's eyes to narrow. Tsunade observed the scene with apathy until she learned what had happened from Jiraiya. "Haruno. San, I suggest you do not touch me," Naruto uttered in the same icy tone. Fear filled Sakura's eyes as she said, N. With his hand on Naruto's shoulder and prepared to strike if the latter tried to attack Sakura, Kakashi said, "That is enough," Naruto, approaching from behind the ladder. Sakura withdrew her hand in surprise as Naruto released Sakura, then turned slowly to face Kakashi with cold eyes. "And you have the fucking right to judge that because?" Even Kakashi's eyes narrowed. "You are a genin, even though you are not under my command. Furthermore, I am your superior." "Well, if you put it that way, why don't we fight and see?" Naruto said with a menacing laugh. "Naruto, that is enough." Immediately stopping, Naruto bowed his waist to Tsunade and said, "I'm sorry, Tsunade. Sama. I forgot my place." Tsunade gave Kakashi a quick glance before turning back to Naruto and grinning, "I think your girlfriend is waiting." Tsunade shook her head, "It's all right, Naruto. I understand your situation." Reddening, Naruto said, What do you mean?" Tsunade grinned, "You know what I mean, Naruto. Hinata. Chan is." Naruto began to utter. "Oh, I didn't mention Hinata. Chan," Tsunade remarked in a somewhat playful tone. Naruto's blushes deepened as Tsunade pushed Hinata and Naruto closer, declaring, "Off you two lovebirds go." They were blushing now and trying to get away as quickly as they could. Tsunade yelled after them, saying, "You two shouldn't go crazy." The teams turned to face Tsunade, who became serious and said, "I don't want this incident spoken to." After watching them go, "I'll handle Naruto on my own, but Team 7 is another story." Now facing Tsunade were Sakura, who had gotten up, Kakashi, who hadn't even taken out his usual book, and Sasuke, who had been observing the situation from a distance with a great deal of shock. Tsunade gave them each a glare and said, "I want to speak with you all later. Naruto has told me some fascinating things." Sakura began to object, saying, "But that's only from. Have I asked what you thought?" Tsunade snarled, "It leads to poor teamwork if a teammate has even a small issue. All issues, no matter how minor, ought to be resolved. And there are a ton of fucking issues, based on what Naruto told me." Sakura remained silent, gazing downcast. With a sigh, Tsunade made her way to the Hokage Tower, calling out, "Shizune, come." Shizune trailed in her shisho. The house of Naruto. Naruto sat down and looked up at the ceiling, grinning like a fool. Okay, so maybe he was just grinning because it was his first date with Hinata, but whatever. Oi, Naruto. When Naruto turned to face his window, he saw someone there. "What the devil are you doing here, sensei?" Naruto inquired. When Jiraiya opened the window, he made a businesslike face instead of responding with a quirky grin or even a stern reprimand. With a quick stop, Naruto turned to face Jiraiya, who said only one thing. "Follow me. A safe place." After entering the bunker that he had no idea existed, Naruto and Jiraiya saw that it was crawling with Anbu. At least 20 of them were visible to him, even though he was unable to see them, and proceeded through a series of metal doors, down multiple flights of stairs, through more metal doors, and eventually through a long hallway that ended in a room. Surprisingly, Naruto entered and saw that the room contained only 3 wooden chairs, one of which was already occupied. "And what are we here for, Sandame?" Naruto asked, his eyes narrowing. Grinning, the elderly man said, "Something big." The master plan began when the door shut behind them. After several months. Looking up at his ceiling, wondering what he was doing, Sasuke got up to get a glass of water. "I think I'll ask Naruto to spar tomorrow," he thought to himself. Naruto had changed a lot. He acted almost hostilely toward Kakashi-sensei, showing a lot of change. Sasuke felt a little let down by not having someone constantly challenge him to a fight, but that was only one aspect of all the changes Konoha was going through. The Sandame had finally retired, and it was a good thing that he was growing older and in need of a full retirement. Tsunade, the new Hokage, appeared to be eager to reform, and she was implementing many of these reforms, not only in the military but also in the political and economic spheres. She created a great deal of jobs for outpost work in branch villages, and she claimed that her goal was to increase Konoha's influence, a move that was clearly successful given the support of the Sandaime and Danzo. Her political reforms were particularly noteworthy. Rather than adopting a more benign and neutral approach, she demonstrated Konoha's power by first eliminating 73% of all bandit camps in Konoha, leaving only the large groups that were too terrified to take any action against the nins. She even established training regiments for nins who wished to advance. These were times when nins could join up and spar, each of which would be handicapped based on skill level or to focus on a particular area. Just as Sasuke reached for the glass, he took a sharp blow to the back that rendered him unconscious. Afterward, Zesse, thank you. Arg, Sasuke moaned, wondering aloud, what happened? Waking up from the bed, he heard a creak to his left and tensed instantly. Sasuke found himself in his bed, precisely as he had woken up in his dream. He was not blind to the four figures that materialized out of nowhere in the moonlight streaming in through the window. Who the hell are you? He reached for a kunai and demanded. The six. Armed boy to his immediate right said with pride, I am Kidomaru. I am the Sound 4. His name is Dakeshi, the hefty person standing next to him said initially. Sakin, the thin boy with blue hair remarked mockingly. The girl with red hair said, to Yuya, with a rather irritated expression, as if she felt compelled to be there. Sakin lunged at Sasuke, saying, let's see what you got, boy. Sasuke moved to the side, swung out with his leg, and Sakin grabbed it, flipping over. There's not much room in the house, Sasuke thought to himself as he leapt outside, moving to face the three nins who were facing him. Wait, only three. Sasuke instinctively dove to the ground, missing the six. Armed Kidomaru swinging at his head. Steadying himself on his hands, Sasuke kicked upwards into Kidomaru, sending Kidomaru flying into a tree. Kidomaru fell to a tree branch, incapacitated by the sharp pain, while Dakeshi and Tayuya charged at Sasuke at the same moment. He ducked under the kunoichi's blow, wrapped his arm around the girl's belt. Rope, kicked Dakeshi's knee joint, and wrenched her off her feet, all while smirking at his own success. He threw Tayuya into Dakeshi, sending them flying with the force of her collision with the big boy. Smirking at his own success, Sasuke turned to look at his assailant, startled to see that several kunai had been thrown at him, and he was shocked to see that none of them had been hurt. As his Sharingan activated, his eyes flashed red, but as they did, he noticed something unusual about them. Everything was slowing down significantly, but why? His eyes felt oddly warm, with a slight irritation in the retina. He pushed the feelings aside for later, realizing that he had to concentrate on the task at hand. The two sides looked at each other for a brief moment before Sakin and Sasuke leapt forward, with Sakin flinching slightly at something he noticed. He was met with the glares of 6 Tomo, 3 in each eye. Though Kabuto, San and Orochimaru. Sama had stated that he was far from having that happen yet, Sakin thought, his Sharingan has evolved already. Sakin leapt back, clutching his nose, and his botched attack cost him a painful punch to the face. That will cost you money. Sakin gave a growl. Sasuke had never witnessed anything like this with his own curse seal, but all of a sudden the dots covering his body started to enlarge and spread. What was happening to his opponent's body? Don't even consider it, you foolish fuck. Face. Tayuya screamed, her own desire to kill growing. Sasuke turned to look at the girl as he felt his opponent's chakra abruptly stop and then swiftly return to its previous level. What had she just prevented Sakin from doing? But before he could wonder, he noticed that one of the 3 spectators had disappeared, and it was too late that he noticed the big guy charging at him from behind. When Dakeshi's fist struck Sasuke's jaw hard, sending him hurtling through the air, he felt someone grab him by the foot and flip him over. It didn't take long for him to realize that Sakin was holding him, but hadn't he just been hurt? Well, Sakin remarked, amused once more. I have to admit, you surprised me. There is some potential in you. Kimimaro, though, had far more. I don't understand why Orochimaru Sama is attracted to you, Sakin said, causing Sasuke to groan in pain. Sakin then threw Sasuke into a nearby wall. Sasuke's attention was drawn to a single word in Sakin's brief speech, Orochimaru. You You'll never be strong enough to reach your full potential if you stay in this village because you'll always be playing little family games, Sakin remarked in an almost casual manner. Sasuke forced his numb limbs to obey and sat down. He felt Orochimaru's 4 minions approaching him, and he knew that if they attacked again, he wouldn't be able to defend himself. Images of Sakura, Kakashi, and even Naruto again flashed through his mind against his will. Damn it. If only I was stronger, he thought regretfully. Exhausted from watching, Tayuya moved forward, easily hauling Sasuke to his feet with a grimace of frustration mixed with a frown of disgust as she grabbed hold of his hair. However, Sasuke was drawn to what she had to say. Join us, Orochimaru. Sama can grant you more power than you could ever imagine, far more than enough to exact revenge on your clan, the woman commanded. You have until tomorrow to make up your mind. The Naruto. While having his usual meal of bread, ramen, and carrots, Naruto heard a knock on his window. Turning around, he saw a very old but familiar scroll there. His eyes widened as he cautiously approached the scroll, opened the window, and took it inside. After reading the scroll's title, Naruto sighed. Naruto regretfully thought, so it begins, as he peered out to Konoha. Hinata. Hinata descended toward a well. Known training area. Kira had been there before, and he had briefly discussed a few details of his mission with her. Well, what do we have here? A pretty time out once more. Kira. Kun, was Hinata's new source as she turned around and grinned. Kira gestured her in his direction as usual, grinning at the honorific or familiarity of her speech, and prepared the teacups. Kira. Kun, I have something too. Hinata grinned as she happily took a seat across from him. Kira jokingly asked, is it your little dates with your Naruto? With a furious blush, Hinata nodded slowly and said, yep. How did you know? It's kind of obvious to see your friend in the orange, Kira laughed heartily. Together, you look fantastic. It looks like he really likes you, Kira said, letting his head rest on Hinata's hand and his elbow resting on his leg as the latter blushed even more. Hinata blinked as she glanced up. Kira made a hand motion. He looks at you with one of those lovey-dovey looks, and every time he leaves you he's smiling like a drunk idiot. He's in love. Hinata reddened even more. Kira. Kun, that's mean, stop teasing me. Though he knew what he was saying was true on the inside, Kira just laughed at her. Jiraiya. With a sigh, Jiraiya glanced over his notes. It would require 10 fucking. A sudden gust of wind blew through the room. Jiraiya blinked. Every window was shut. Jiraiya turned to face his surroundings and noticed a new scroll on his table. His eyes grew wide when he read the words, did they? Did they accept? With shaking hands, Jiraiya grabbed the scroll and unfolded it. Sasuke. Now, Sasuke found himself in a situation he did not want to be in. Right now, he didn't want to consider whether or not to leave the village. But this time, he had to make a decision. His quest for power drove every decision he made, including whether to kill that man, or stay with Konoha and his friends. However, he was aware that Itachi was pursuing Naruto. Even though Itachi would be called a traitor, wouldn't it be better to destroy him and ensure the safety of Naruto and Konoha? He obviously needed power because he couldn't just run straight at Itachi. He was aware that Orochimaru was a member of the Sannin, so he had the ability to grant Sasuke the power he wanted. If he went to Orochimaru, he would undoubtedly receive years of unbroken training. It was a valuable resource for him. What would it benefit him to remain in Konoha? Yes, he could battle Naruto and even receive training from him. Yes, Konoha could give him some power, but there would be a lot of distractions. He could become feeble or pliable towards someone. Additionally, he was unsure of what to do if Itachi showed up for his buddies. Rather than be with his friends and constantly fear their deaths due to his inability to keep them safe, he would prefer to know they were safe. And there was the whole curse seal deal. According to what those 4 shinobi said, he would lose his free will if he used the Juninjutsu too frequently in his current state. The Konoha shinobi would be forced to kill him or permanently seal away his chakra since he had turned into an uncontrollable killer. Though Sasuke really wasn't ready to leave Konoha just yet. He was forced to. But in all honesty, what was it he desired? What was that? His stomach twisted with emotions. He wanted to go, but he was reluctant. He was bewildered. What was it he desired? It seemed as though something was pulling him along, not pressuring him to decide to go. What was that? As Sasuke made his way back to the living world gradually, he sensed something in his hand. It was a leaf of green. In his palm lay the symbol of Konoha, his home. He simply gazed at it for a brief while. After he took this action, he could not go back. He was the only one without a shortcut, but wasn't Orochimaru going to take one? He needed to leave. Did he really need to, though? Not that he had to. He prayed to Kami, asking for their forgiveness for his actions. To him, though, it really didn't matter. Either way, he was going back to Konoha. He didn't care if he returned in a coffin or chains. He would return nonetheless. He had already made his choice. He did not see a figure standing silently watching him with a large scroll on his back. The following morning. That day, Naruto had woken up early. It was the day. It was the day, the last day of all the days. He was going to die today, or maybe tomorrow, and be reborn. There was just a clear path that led to the finish line, neither holes nor uncertainties. That is the price you pay for a. Knock knock, open up, Naruto, it's an emergency. It surprised Naruto to see Shikamaru breathing heavily when he opened the door. Shikamaru, what's? Shikamaru grabbed Naruto by the collar and pulled him. What's? Sasuke has abandoned the village with some sound nins. We have to get him back. Though his eyes widened in shock, Naruto sensed a dreaded anxiety creeping up on him. He felt something was coming to him rather than a sense of dread from a friend leaving. He would have to walk a solitary path, and nothing would be the same. Everything would be lost for him. His own demise was drawing near. Following the sound Naruto dashed across the forest. It appeared that they had located a substitute for the obese man he had slain previously. Naruto occupied the top spot, followed closely by Kiba, Shikamaru, Choji, and Neji. This mission was under the control of Naruto. Retrospection. Blinking, Naruto listened to Shikamaru. I am in charge of this mission? Shikamaru gave a nod. Hokage. Sama told us that you would be able to handle it and then shoved me out. With a right nod, Naruto turned to face his squad. Kiba, Neji, Shino, and Shikamaru Choji were present. This wasn't a bad team, but he might as well be fig-hitting alone against the people he knew they were fig-hitting against. Unless. Naruto grinned as he came up with a strategy. Naruto shot off like a rocket, and the Genin +1 Chunin ran after him, scrambling to catch up like dogs after their master. Alright, let's hurry, we've wasted enough time already. Formation as Kiba and Shino will be leading, Neji in the back, Choji second to last, Shikamaru second, and I am in the middle. Move out! Naruto exclaimed. Flashback concludes. And now they were racing after Sasuke and his captors at full speed. Kiba had detected and followed a robust trail. They ran for a while, putting in a lot of effort, until they were getting close to the target. They should slow down and get ready for intense fighting, Naruto gestured. It would not be simple to do this. They were up against nins at the Anbu level. Though he didn't have the luxury of time, Naruto could probably take them on one by one. He would thus employ the drop-off technique. Have someone stall or defeat the opponent after first weakening them. And it would go on. The secret to this strategy is to use all of your men to attack a single target, severely weakening or paralyzing it. When Naruto noticed them in the clearing, he blinked. Naruto could plainly see the barrel there. This was a surprise. No, it wasn't surprising. Rather, it was a set. Up. Naruto gestured for his group to advance. Naruto stayed back to get ready for the counterattack while the rest of them leapt down to attack the ninjas. Although he also had another motivation. As he watched the nins descend, Kakashi uttered the words, "I'll take care of these guys," with a tone of quiet authority. He had another reason, too. Hirobu, his brother, was killed by a blonde kid, or some sort of Konoha genin. Kakashi would slowly murder all of these brats in retaliation. To his teammates, they were all in agreement. His special ability to take his opponent's chakra and add it to his own was a great way to weaken or even eliminate their opposition, but no one really cared about his personal motivations. Kidomaru said, "Well, catch up with us as soon as you're done feeding off their chakra," as they started to walk away. "We're gonna head out." The genins clenched, prepared to attack. "You are already in my trap." Douton, Earth Dome, yelled Dakeshi, grinning. The genins were engulfed in a chakra. Eating dome as a massive dome burst open over them. Kitamura grabbed the barrel containing Sasuke as soon as Dakeshi finished doing this, and the other ninjas fled. Kiba's eyebrow twitched when he realized Naruto was not with them when they were trapped in the dome. From inside the dome, Kiba cried out, "Damn it, Naruto." Shino let out a sigh at his colleague's impatience. As soon as Naruto noticed his team enclosed in a dome. "Lead the way," he said, observing the nin hunching over and drawing chakra from the dome. With his hands already covered in a jutsu, Naruto leapt forward. He still had enough chakra to use some high wind chakra even if he wasn't in golden eyes. Dakeshi tried to step aside, but his eyes widened and he exclaimed, "Fuuton, Dragon Claw." Dakeshi walked over to the side and yelled, "Aarg." The interest of his allies. Neji was looking in shock at his hands. Our chakra is being sucked dry. Crack. A loud noise erupted from behind Naruto. Naruto knew that the dome had been broken somehow without having to see it for himself, so he didn't even turn around. "So it's a stationary technique, huh?" Naruto asked, amused as he glanced at the sound nin. Even though he didn't kill the man, he still caused significant harm. Dakeshi's arm was so badly scraped that it looked like minced blood. Dakeshi glared at Naruto, his face twisted in agony. The blonde Chunin remarked, "Good work everyone," with a slight sneer directed at Dakeshi. With pained eyes closed, Dakeshi uttered, "So you got out, you scum." Then, he would have to apply the curse seal. Both Kiba and the Choji glared back, lowering themselves automatically in anticipation of a charge. "Well, that concludes it," exclaimed the dog. "Boy. He's going down." Naruto immediately took care of the situation. "Shut up, I am in charge." Kiba halted, scowled at Naruto, and obeyed his commands. Naruto turned to face Choji, asking, "How are your chakra levels? Can you handle him?" With his eyes fixed on Dakeshi, Choji gave a thumbs up and said, "He didn't suck out much. I still have my trump cards too." Naruto gave a nod. "Alright then, take him out and follow us. But if you're injured, heal your wounds first." With a nod, Choji charged his chakra. "Are we abandoning him?" The Hyuga yelled. Just as Neji was going to continue, Naruto turned and glared at him deathly. "I don't remember asking my orders to be questioned. Choji can handle him. Let's move on." Neji stopped thinking and gave a nod. Naruto stepped forward, dodging Dakeshi with a jump. After that, Shino, Neji, and Kiba came next. After pausing, Shikamaru whispered, "We will leave marks for you." Choji gave a nod. Shikamaru leapt in pursuit of the group. Dakeshi began to charge them as soon as he noticed them leaving. "Oh no you don't." But a massive fist stopped him. Dakeshi stopped after being forced through multiple trees. Gradually rising, Dakeshi glared at his assailant. Growling, Choji shot back a glare and said, "You won't be going after them." The Naruto. Taking into account our adversary. We'll need to employ a time honored trick to surprise them, Naruto said, turning to face his companions. Naruto grinned, "These guys can double team them if I can eliminate one of them." "Alright, guys, this is what we are going to do." Later. With Dakeshi having already dispatched those pests, and them still being somewhat worn out from their earlier use of the sealing techniques, the remaining members of the Sound Four proceeded at a leisurely and slow pace. They were already several miles away when it started getting a bit worrisome when the last of them failed to return. Had something happened to the bulky bastard? "Dakeshi, he's late," Sakin said, not really giving a damn about his teammates slipping away. Kitamura responded, "Nah," as he felt the familiar, hefty body land on a nearby tree limb, confirming his suspicion that he's already here. "What took you so long?" Sakin snapped, realizing that they were running out of time and that if they continued to delay, they would have a major problem with Orochimaru. Sama when he would have to swap bodies with someone he would rather not. As he reformed their formation, Dakeshi apologized, saying, "It took some time to take those bastards' chakra away." "Damn fat ass," Tayuya, who was also in a foul mood, insulted, hurrying to carry the coffin. "It's your responsibility, dupe." "Indeed," Dakeshi mutely replied. They all looked at him suspiciously when he answered, and the only time they had never heard the big boy not reprimand Tayuya for swearing was. Kidomaru said, subtly bending Chakra, "Hey, Dakeshi. You're so obedient today." "What?" the faker questioned, a frown forming over his features. Turning to face the imposter, Kidomaru said, "I'm saying that I can't let you carry this coffin," and two of his 6 arms swiftly took the coffin off his back and threw it to Tayuya. "Since you're not Dakeshi." The imposter, scowling even more at the loss of his cover, quickly withdrew a kunai and attempted to stab Kidomaru, but the 6-armed boy easily caught the arm. It was clear that the imposter lacked the physical strength of the real Dakeshi, as he easily caught the coffin before noticing something startling. "Kidomaru, watch out." With a kick to Kidomaru's back, Naruto leapt out of the trees, sending him flying into a tree. Saken charged at Naruto, thinking he would catch him off guard, but Neji emerged from the trees and sent Saken flying back as well. Tayuya glared at them and braced herself. "Nice plan," the Dakeshi imposter remarked, puffing smoke to reveal Shikamaru in his place. Naruto shrugged. "All right. It's probably time," Naruto grinned. As the other 3 tensed, they looked down to see bugs sucking their chakra by crawling up their legs. Suddenly, they realized something was crawling on them. Kidomaru and Saken both wiped the bug off their legs and leapt to a higher branch as Tayuya screeched as she leapt up to a high ledge and exclaimed, "Fuck." Naruto vanished, believing he had one down. When Tayuya looked up, the blonde was standing in front of her. In defense, she held up her arms. Smirking, Naruto said, "Wrong move." With a cry of, "Fuuton, Soul Crush." Naruto charged forward, slipping past Tayuya's defenses and striking her in the chest. Her ribcage bent as a result of it indenting into her body, but that wasn't the main damage. The internal organs, or the inner self, were the target of Naruto's literal soul crush. Based on observing the Hyuga's technique and some notes left by Watari, a well-known taijutsu and wind user, Naruto had created it. Naruto used his front hand to compress air. He would pump wind chakra into the target's body when he punched, causing the chakra to burst out with incredible force rather than ripping from the inside. Naruto's wind chakra passed between Tayuya's lungs and close to her heart when he struck her in the chest. It tore at the heart and lungs, rupturing them and causing lethal internal damage. Not only did Tayuya cough up blood, but it also spurted out of her ears and eyes. She felt devoid of life. Naruto picked up the coffin from the ledge. After seeing the death, Kidomaru and Saken became enraged and attempted to attack Naruto. Saken had 2 drills with him. Saken cried out, "Gatsuga!" and covered both of his hands, but the blow still severely injured him. A palm strike to the arm stopped Kidomaru, causing his arm to become numb. Saken was now up against Shino and Kiba. Kidomaru was confronted by Shino and Shikamaru. "Okay, let's wrap this up," Naruto exclaimed as he sensed something behind him. After turning around, Naruto threw 2 kunai. With ease, the kunais were blocked, and Naruto took a kick to the stomach that sent him flying back. Naruto looked around in shock. That was not the same sound. However, his hair was white this time. "Oh no, another one." Naruto thought, "This is not how I planned it." He would need to use Golden Eye's state far sooner than he had anticipated if this continued. The white-haired nin said, "I will take Sasuke from here." "Alright, we'll take care of these brats, Kimimaro," Kidomaru grinned while blinking. Naruto gave a fierce look. "Guys handle these guys, I'll handle white boy over here." Kimimaro cast a curious glance at Naruto. "White boy. Is it?" Naruto grinned. Channeling chakra into his feet, Naruto charged forward, saying, "Well, let's get the show on the road." All Kimimaro did was raise his hand and gesture toward Naruto. Is it a hidden projectile or chakra attack? Naruto pondered. Unexpectedly, bones shot past Kimimaro and toward Naruto. With wide eyes, Naruto lowered his body to allow the bullets to pass over him. "Both, huh?" Naruto thought thoughtfully. With his hand up, Naruto had drawn near Kimimaro. Naruto had used Fuuton, Soul Crush, before, and it had worked, so why not now? Sadly, Kimimaro avoided it after witnessing what it had done to Tayuya. When Naruto let go of the chakra, the misdirected punch caused a small explosion of sound. Unsteady on his feet, Kimimaro had to leap clear of the casket to maintain his balance. He would not take this opponent lightly. Tayuya was not a soft target for the blonde boy. He had killed him with ease. With his eyes flickering from blue to red rather than from gold to blue, Naruto glared at Kimimaro. While standing there, Naruto was having difficulty summoning the Kyuubi's chakra. The fox was adamant about holding onto it. Unlike when he had used it for the first time. With a slow motion, Kimimaro's hands rose and two bone blades emerged from his palm. With an eyebrow raised, Naruto kept his thoughts to himself. The wind was far more powerful than the bone blade, regardless of its strength. However, I'm not able to use soul-crushing strike anymore because it requires too much wind manipulation and could exhaust me. Prior to having to battle, Kimimaro rushed towards Naruto. Naruto crouched down and prepared himself. Kimimaro struck Naruto's head violently. Naruto took another deep breath. Anticipating this, Kimimaro stabbed with his left hand. With a swift motion, Naruto raised his hand and executed an outer defense block, forcing the stab to move aside and exposing Kimimaro's body. Naruto moved forward, his elbow gooey. With luck, Kimimaro retreated, absorbing the worst of the blow. Kimimaro gave Naruto a scowl. Why did you not use the soul crush strike like before? Takes too much chakra. Heh. Naruto grinned and scratched his head before vanishing and resurfacing behind Kimimaro. He kicked Kimimaro in the back of the head with a roundhouse kick. Kimimaro tried to duck under it and turn around. Naruto planted the base of his foot against a tree trunk and let his roundhouse kick go through. Naruto kicked off the surface, using it as a new floor, and sent his other foot flying straight into Kimimaro. With his reflexes like lightning, Kimimaro was able to block the strike with his hands, sending him screeching back. That blow was more powerful than the previous one, Kimimaro remarked, perplexed as to how the child could be growing more powerful every time. Kimimaro noticed the blonde's eyes had become red slits as she glanced at him. He has a fascinating chakra, Kimimaro pondered. It would be worthwhile to battle this opponent. Kimimaro said, you possess great chakra potential, earning Naruto a menacing red-eyed scowl. He had heard Orochimaru complain about a blonde boy named Naruto, so he asked, are you perhaps the boy called Naruto? Orochimaru's concerns appeared to have been well founded. The boy possessed an incredible amount of power for his young age, which was both startling and unexpected. Naruto snarled and got to his feet, saying, yes. Kimimaro sighed as he took in his surroundings. He cried out to the surviving sound nins, saying, I have already called for backup for you. I am going on ahead. I can't fight in a forest. Naruto followed closely behind Kimimaro, keeping up with his rapid pace. Naruto summoned the chakra of the Kyuubi. With some mental yelling and physical force, Naruto managed to get the Kyuubi to give him some chakra. Given how his hyper chakra was bouncing around, it was a respectable quantity. Naruto was undoubtedly a chakra powerhouse. When they finally arrived at a clearing, Kimimaro turned to face Naruto. With a raised bone sword, Kimimaro declared, this will be your grave. No, this will be yours, smirked Naruto. I just need to kill time till, he said, glancing back to Kimimaro. Naruto raised his hand in a gesture he was used to. Taiju Kage Bunshin. Looking around, Kimimaro blinked, interesting. Charge! Yelled Naruto. With intent to beat the living daylights out of Kimimaro, the Narutos charged at him. With grace, Kimimaro moved through the Naruto crowd, slashing and stabbing his way. Kimimaro was perplexed by Naruto's actions the entire time. Kimimaro sidestepped a blow to his face and stabbed a passing Naruto. This boy is hurling pointless things at me. He probably has enough experience to realize this. Kimimaro fired 5 bullets through a group of Kage Bunshin Narutos, so why? Is he holding back on something? With their arms crossed, the original Naruto caught Kimimaro's attention. Instead of glancing at him, the boy was instead. The casket. Why not take it? He's waiting for Sasuke-sama. Unless he is aware that the boy is willing to kill Sasuke and that Sasuke has betrayed the village? However, Kimimaro didn't think that made sense. It was like implying that a wolf would rebel against its own pack. Thus, why? What made the boy try to be slow? With the destruction of the last Kage Bunshin, Kimimaro straightened up. He gave Naruto a curious glance, and Naruto glanced back for a moment. We're at a disadvantage, aren't we, white boy? Kimimaro laughed, something he had never heard so absurd. Yes we are. Now do you mind telling me why you are not taking our fight seriously? Because, I am not the one you should be worried about, Naruto said, laughing and wearing a devil Mayer's sly expression. Kimimaro heard something behind him, and his eyes widened. Konoha Senpu. Kimimaro was knocked sideways again, breaking his jaw and cracking his neck with a loud cracking sound that shattered flesh and bone. He easily bandaged his skeletal wounds and turned to face the direction of the unexpected blows. He noticed a strangely haircutted man wearing a green suit as he stood up. He was distracted, damn it, and the shinobi had come in from behind. I think this boy is good, Kimimaro said. If they attacked him simultaneously, this would get tricky. He could probably handle each of them individually, but combined, that would definitely be challenging. And you are? Kimimaro inquired simply, wanting to know his opponent's name. He had become fond of this custom. Konohagakure's green beast reincarnated, the angry sounding green shinobi declared. I am Rock Lee. Though he kept his gaze fixed on Kimimaro, Lee glanced curiously at Naruto. Naruto was only sending Kage Bunshin at the sound nin when he came in. Why wasn't Naruto using the many other techniques he possessed in addition to that? Naruto said, Lee. I have no idea what you are doing here. But. Thank you. Please take care of this guy while. The coffin containing Sasuke suddenly burst open, revealing a hideous form as if it had been practiced. The figure's long mane of navy blue hair contrasted with its sickly gray black complexion. The only thing that distinguished it from its original body was the Uchiha emblem on the back of the shirt it was wearing. The gray skin disappeared in an instant. The blue hair went black and short. The missing Uchiha Sasuke stood in the figure's place. With a sigh, Naruto seemed irritated by a small child who wanted to play. While I take care of Sasuke. Lee turned back to face the opposing shinobi and uttered, I understand, Naruto, may the flames of youth be with you. He continued, his voice growing serious, I will follow you once I have taken care of this man. As Sasuke darted forward into the woods, Naruto nodded slowly and said, the others should be finishing up their own battles soon. They will be here to back you up. After letting out a single sigh, Naruto vanished and pursued Sasuke. Shikamaru. Shikamaru peered at the Sound 4's lifeless corpse. At last, Shikamaru thought, feeling a little relieved. They had been engaged in a 2-on-1 battle with the Sound until it came to a halt. Given that these guys were comparable to the majority of Anbu, it was expected. The day was saved when the Suna Nins arrived. Or rather, they saved the day. Alright guys, we need to keep moving, shouted Shikamaru. Neji's cry, there are Sound Nins approaching from the east side, caused the group to stand up. It appears we won't be able to catch up so soon, Shikamaru said to himself, cursing. Naruto. Later. Taking a quick look around, he quickly realized where he was, a location he had learned about during his early years at the academy, and realized he was standing atop the massive statue monument of the Shodai Hokage, with the monument of Uchiha Madara standing proudly on the other side of the great river that divided them. The waterfall between the two of them roared, just as proud as the two monoliths that it forever separated. Huh, thought Naruto, amusingly. However, Naruto's attention was drawn to the figure dressed in black standing atop the Madara monument, Uchiha Sasuke, who was once again grinning haughtily atop the monument's head. I have no choice but to do this, Naruto sighed heavily. Naruto. You shouldn't have followed me, shouted Sasuke, his voice rising above the sound of the falling waterfall. What are you up to? It took me some time to get ready, but Naruto knew exactly what Sasuke was doing, he growled. Sasuke cried, right here, right now. We fight and finish this. With a sly smile, Naruto declared, you will lose. It seemed as though Naruto knew exactly how this battle would turn out, but Sasuke allowed that to fade and focused his gaze on the Sharingan, a creature of incredible brilliance. I don't have to hide it anymore, Naruto thought as he sighed. Focusing, he allowed the remnants of Kyuubi's chakra to excite the remaining chakra. When he opened his eyes, he encountered golden eyes. Gritting his teeth, Sasuke yelled, Naruto. As he blinked at what he saw, realizing that this was Something else. Did Naruto really have a bloodline limit? Sasuke leapt off the ledge and lunged directly at Naruto. Shit, I can't dodge, Sasuke said, his eyes widening in shock as he saw Naruto's speed. Naruto pushed off his statue and went twice, no, 3 times as fast as Sasuke. On the other hand, Naruto raised his hand and directed a powerful gauntlet of wind toward Sasuke, swishing it down upon him, not intending to kill or seriously hurt him. Sasuke was pushed all the way down 80 feet of air and finally sent crashing into the water, but Naruto let the wind carry him as he slowly glided to the water's surface. What Sasuke experienced should not be experienced by any living being. It was the crushing power of 100 atmospheres. Imagine the pressure of the earth times 100, yeah, it hurts like hell. It took 20 seconds for Sasuke to get his bearings. He was slowly floating upwards under the water, his body hurting as though he had just been shot faster and harder than a bullet. Drowsily, he emerged onto the surface of the water and searched for his opponent. Here, on the right. Sasuke. Him bored when we are hitting. How dare here? Sasuke whipped around to the rocks and saw Naruto sitting down at the shore, looking bored. Sasuke broke through multiple hand seals and charged with the Chidori in his hand. Naruto leapt up and charged as well. Sasuke slashed with the Chidori, but Naruto ducked under it. Sasuke was about to bring it down to slash at Naruto's arm, but Naruto countered by simply standing up. Because Naruto stood up, while he was fairly close to Sasuke, his shoulder lodged itself between Sasuke's elbow and shoulders, making it impossible for Sasuke to attack Naruto safely. However, for Naruto, it was fine, as he reared his head back and delivered a devastating head. But Sasuke flew back, skidding on the water's surface like a stone. I'll give you one last opportunity to return home in peace. Naruto called out. He was not going to play around anymore. He was worried about his team. By his calculations, they should have been here by now. This was a fight he would rather not have. There were safety precautions for this, and Naruto knew for a fact he would not get a real fight of this. There were safeguards against that too. After this, I'll bring you back by force. Even if it means breaking your legs and arms. Are you serious? Was Sasuke's reply, his sneer turning into a smirk. Even though Naruto may be overpowering him now, he still had the upper hand with the cursed seal. You can give it a try. Naruto made the decision to put an end to this. I'm sorry, Sasuke, even though this could happen. You are still my friend. Sasuke prepared himself as Naruto lunged forward. Naruto inhaled deeply and let out a forceful exhale. Sasuke covered himself from the force by crossing his arm. Naruto vanished and then resurfaced behind Sasuke. After grabbing Sasuke's arm, Naruto snapped his elbow and withdrew his hand. A cry that made Sasuke's blood curdle. His elbow joints protruded from his arm in the manner of a fractured chicken wing. Then, with his right leg raised, Naruto struck Sasuke's left thigh with great force. In addition to the fact that Naruto made 2 lengthy incisions into Sasuke's leg to be sure, it was so hard that the tendons broke. At last, Naruto put Sasuke's neck under his right arm. Naruto swung around on his rear leg and hurled his arm forward. Sasuke made a loud crunch as he flew into the wall. Sasuke was successfully choked out by Naruto's arm, and his removal was ensured by the collision with the wall. Naruto saw as Sasuke's lifeless body collapsed into a heap of pieces. With a sigh, Naruto approached the lifeless body gingerly. I apologize. Sasuke. Naruto bowed down and touched the seal, saying, I hope one day you will understand the choice I will make. Following his instructions, he infused the seal with chakra, and it vanished, leaving no trace. Naruto thought, part 2 of the mission accomplished. Moving on to the 3rd step. Naruto. Naruto pivoted and blinked, involuntarily disabling his golden eyes condition. He was surprised by how many people were here. In addition to his group, Gaara and his group, as well as Kakashi, were present. With a scratch to his head, Naruto declared, mission accomplished. Let's head home. Kakashi moved up to say, Naruto. Your visual organs. A chill went through Naruto's body as he blinked and saw his reflection, which showed him his golden eyes staring back at him. What? I thought I turned it off. Naruto blinked again and saw his blue eyes once more. So I am losing my natural chakra. With a smile, Naruto turned back to Kakashi and concealed his features. I'm okay, let's head home. This is troublesome. Naruto has been hiding something big. To defeat Sasuke easily. He must have been hiding something really big. Troublesome, Shikamaru said, peeping around from behind. Konoha. In Sarutobi's compound, Jiraiya and the Sandaime shared a small room where they sat together. Jiraiya sipped from his tea. When the time came, he had to be clean or in good health. So, this is it at last, huh? I will. Want to see him before part 3 starts, Sandaime said, nodding. Give him one last chance to say goodbye before we kill him. Jiraiya sipped again, nodding. Sensei. I'm sure this plan will work, but what will happen afterwards? What happens after is entirely up to, Sandaime laughed. Gates of Konoha. Tsunade stood outside the gates. She had heard the team was returning. She already had Choji in the emergency room. His medicine already made, and his life far from death. He would need plenty of bed rest, of course, at least a week. On the other hand, she was worried about Naruto. She had put Naruto in charge of the mission and Choji had told her of what Naruto had planned. She had to agree with Naruto. Given the current tools, it was necessary to do what he did, but what happened if it didn't work? Sure, Choji was able to beat the Nin but barely, and Choji nearly lost his life. With a sigh, Tsunade looked up and saw a pack. Her eyes widened as she studied the scene and then yelled, "Get the medics and STRETCERS, let's go people." Over her shoulder. Many civilians gathered at the scene, scared half to death by what they saw, a demon. Container carrying their precious Uchiha, unconscious and bleeding profusely, his limbs mangled. The medics and doctors rushed to comply with her command. After rushing over to place Sasuke on a stretcher, Naruto turned to face Tsunade and said, "Tsunade. Sama. Mission successfully completed." Naruto received a smile from Tsunade, who said, "Accepted, you and your team get some R&R unless they are injured." "Ah, I think Neji and Shino should be looked at, they took some pretty good blows from the sound Nins," Naruto said, nodding before blinking. "Take them to ER, Tsunade nodded, noticing that Naruto had gestured for them to come forward. "Make Shizune take care of them." Tsunade. "Sama," was the first thing Shikamaru said. Tsunade nodded as she turned to face Shikamaru. "Moving on," Shikamaru said, "is Choji." "Okay. He is fine. He suffered minor damages and is recovering from the pills he took," Tsunade said with a smile. "He is fine because he did not take the last pill." Shikamaru began to cry. Everyone was safe, Naruto grinned at the display of feeling, and everything would be well. Naruto pivoted and commenced strolling towards his flat. "Hi, Naruto." Turning, Naruto saw Kiba grinning at him. "How about we celebrate our solo mission with a party?" With a smile, Naruto said, "You guys. I should get some sleep." Naruto sighed. He should probably go to his favorite spot. Kiba shrugged and led the other guys to his house for some partying. After 30 minutes. In his favorite spot, atop the fourth Hokage's head, Naruto felt a presence behind him but remained motionless. Naruto. "Kun, I heard you returned from a mission." After turning around and grinning at Hinata, Naruto moved to pat the spot beside him. Hinata complied by sitting down next to him, blushing a little. After taking a seat, Naruto nodded and said, "Yeah, it was pretty tough, my team got injured." Although Hinata cast a downward glance, she continued, "But you accomplished the mission." Naruto sighed. Accomplishing is one thing, but if you lose your teammate then you aren't worth to be called a leader. "But, wait, isn't Sasuke your friend?" Hinata asked, cocking her head. "Yeah," Naruto grinned as he gave her a look. "But I'm friends with those guys too." "Well, I hope you never have to choose between your friends again." Though it was still early in the night, Naruto's gut instinct told him that he would definitely do so. He turned to face Hinata, who was staring up at the rising moon, and was struck by how stunning she looked, her hair glittering in the moonlight like suspended glitter and her skin glowing subtly as though she were a goddess. Naruto made up his mind to do something crazy since he didn't have much time left. "Hinata-chan." Hinata turned inquiringly, and when she did, she was completely taken aback when Naruto's lips met hers. Rather than passing out or anything, she absorbed the kiss and it felt so right, like a dream that had gone perfectly. They met each other's eyes as they gradually parted ways. After grinning, Hinata said, Naruto. Kun, why? Your eyes are golden. Naruto sighed, blinking. Ah. That's a lengthy tale, though. With all her bravery, Hinata placed her hand on his and pleaded, please tell me. Naruto looked at her and began to narrate the stories, beginning with the moment he was rejected by Kakashi. He laughed, saying, who knew she was so brave? Ah hell, who am I kidding? Naruto's apartment, that evening. That day was very fortunate for Naruto, as he turned on the lights, sat down, and grinned. It was fairly dark when he entered, but he might as well be bathed in hot sun, as it wasn't gonna get any hotter. He had kissed Hinata twice in total, once on the Hokage monument and once again just before she entered the Hyuga compound. He was positive that Neji saw, but Neji said nothing. Enjoying yourself, aren't you, young wind? Activating his golden eyes, Naruto spun around at the voice, realizing that it was unfamiliar and that whoever had managed to sneak up on him must have been very strong or very distracted. Ignoring the fact that the man appeared to be dressed like a monk, Naruto saw him and gave him a scowl. With caution, Naruto said, W. Who are you? As soon as the man stopped laughing and a light breeze started to blow through the air, Naruto knew exactly who he was facing and instantly bent down to say, Shisho, please forgive me for my impudence. It's quite alright, young one. Now I have come here to tell you that I have accepted you, the man said, laughing again. However, while you're on your way to my house, I need you to do me a favor. Head bowed, Naruto said, anything. The following day. Today would be the day of the debriefing. Naruto got up bright and early, packing a few scrolls into a knapsack and setting aside his belongings. After finishing his breakfast, he walked towards the Hokage monument, where he was met with a lot of stares, and glares from everyone. They knew he had brought home a broken Uchiha, but it didn't seem to matter to him. He sighed as he ascended a flight of stairs and eventually arrived at the Hokage office, where his team was waiting for him. Hokage glanced at the mission file before turning to face Naruto again. Report. Later. Anbu approached Naruto as he descended the stairs, saying, Uzumaki Naruto. The council wants to speak with you. Naruto blinked and shrugged, saying that it's better to be early than late. Consequently, he gave the Anbu permission to shunshin him to the council room, which was not as intimidating as one might have thought. It was a plain wooden room with a circular desk in the center, except that the center was actually an empty space where people who were being questioned or on trial were supposed to be. Naruto peered around and saw that Danzo, the advisors, most of the clan leaders, and a few political figures were present. Yes, this would be the time to complete part 3 of the mission, Naruto thought as he sighed and turned to look behind the Hokage and saw Jiraiya nodding to him. We are gathered here today, Sai, Tsunade said, glancing over the table. We've chosen to talk about the interesting abilities that Naruto has displayed. Let's finish this now so we can go on. Hokage. Sama, I think you shouldn't make light of this situation, the advisors coughed. The boy is Seuss. After using its chakra. Bang, Naruto blinked. It was Inuzuka Sume, not Tsunade. Sama, who had struck her fist. Shut up. My son and his teammates have been led through hell and back by this boy. Are you going to let them die? No, it would be beneficial for Konoha if the boy was trained to use the chakra correctly, Danzo said, raising his hand. Jiraiya pointed 3 fingers at Naruto, who said, wait. Hiyashi got up and said, I agree with Sume. The boy is capable of using it successfully and knows what he is doing. Did he not catch the traitor? And did he not bring him back alive? But what about the chakra? We know what it could do to the boy's mind, a bystander said. Jiraiya let out a sigh and raised a fist to let Naruto see. Showtime, Naruto said, nodding. When Naruto coughed, everyone's eyes shifted to him. After giving each of them a quick glance, Naruto said, I. For one, agree with Danzo. Tsunade's mouth was open in shock as there was a hushed silence and shock coming from every direction in the room. To manage my chakra. I'm going to force myself into self. Exile. Banishment. Banishing. The word was simply Jinchuriki or Rasengan, but each of these words had a purpose. That was what Naruto had said in front of the advisors. Was there a need for this? He was aware of the response. Had he an option? That, too, had an answer that he knew. It was important to just follow the instructions. He was a wind-up toy that was being used. It was up to him what he did to reach his objectives, but the waypoints and endpoint. Those were set in stone. Exile was an inevitable fate. Retrospection. Exile. Something was whispered. Quite the contrary of what Naruto had anticipated. He half expected someone to interrupt him for making jokes during the meeting, Tsunade or anyone else. However, not a single person did. Rather, an eerie quietness enveloped the space. He was surprised to hear Danzo speak first. Danzo did not want pointless torture. He was a warrior for Konoha, with an emphasis on for Konoha. Boy. This decision is not one to be made lightly. It would benefit Konoha greatly if you stayed here, but tell us your reasoning for exiling yourself from Konoha. Without a doubt, this boy was a valuable asset to Konoha. His strength and unwavering loyalty to the island nation were admirable. If only he could bring this boy into Ne, where Danzo could use him to his fullest potential. Naruto nodded, recalling the explanations offered to him. It come from a multitude of factors. First of all, I am the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, there is no running around this. I must learn OT use its chakra or it will consume me or influence me one way or another. Danzo gave a nod, but Homura continued. That is true, but couldn't you do that inside Konoha? Naruto gave a nod. That is a possibility, but I could also lose control and devastate Konoha, that is too much of a risk. I believe outside training is better. Tsunade eventually spoke up at that point. Then what about a training trip? Exiling yourself is overboard. Naruto let out a sigh. I have thought of that too, but that still leaves my allegiance to Konoha, and with the Akatsuki hunting me, there is a chance that the Noob Nins will hunt me. Again, Danzo said, we have protection for that. Slowly, Naruto shook his head. Protection against S. Class Nins? I have seen their level, they are on levels to match cages, and while Jiraiya, Sama and Hokage. Sama are strong, an all-out battle between them would also devastate Konoha. It is better to sacrifice one person for the safety of Konoha. Oh, how accurate his remarks were. He was making a self-sacrificing act for Konoha along with two others. Once more, there was silence. There was nobody who could contest his logic. At last, Tsunade spoke again, her voice cracking slightly. Is there any way we can deter you from this course of action? Shaking his head, Naruto gave her a melancholic smile. I know what I need to do. Now. I have a scroll to make this official. Everybody blinked. Was this what he was expecting? Danzo asked about the scroll's unexpected appearance. Where did you get the scroll from? After pausing, Naruto went forward and gave it to Tsunade, who opened it. Tsunade glanced at it, her eyes getting bigger. Sensei has already signed it? Flashback concludes. Weary, Naruto stepped up to the front of his door. Tomorrow he would be heading out. The door was opened by him. He entered. He pulled out a cup of ramen noodles. He removed a number of bags and scrolls. The scrolls held armaments and provisions. Other supplies were inside the bags. Naruto produced a second scroll. It was a scroll for sealing. He shut the rations inside. He pocketed the scroll in his back. He had filled the instant ramen cup with boiled water. He took a seat. He took something from his other pocket. He removed a band from his head. He questioned why he owned it. He recalled. He was allowed to keep it by the council. Retrospection. A flurry of conversations and whispers broke out now. At this point, everyone was chatting among themselves. Teammates of Naruto were debating the effects of his banishment. Not only was it odd that someone would request exile, but Sandame seemed to be in favor of it as well. This was unlike anything the council had ever dealt with. The civilians were debating if this was all a heist or if the demon would truly depart. Danzo and the advisors were debating the reasons behind Naruto's unexpected banishment. Tsunade, however, remained silent as she took in her surroundings. This continued for a few minutes before Tsunade turned to face Jiraiya. Jiraiya's expressionless demeanor demonstrated his seriousness and support for Naruto. Tsunade let out a sigh. Did you know of this? Jiraiya gave a slow nod. Sign it. Tsunade took up a pen and turned back to the scroll. She sent off the person who saved you, but she trusted Sensei and Jiraiya. There was no doubt that this was going too far. Signed by her. Everyone came to a stop and faced Tsunade. Tsunade turned away, unwilling to look at anybody. Jiraiya moved forward, giving her a shoulder pat. Taking up his scroll, he spoke. Because the Hokage has signed this, these actions shall be done effectively and immediately. Naruto Uzumaki shall be relieved from military duty. Flashback concludes. Naruto had evolved from a Chunin. Now all he was a fucking civilian. His apartment was gone. His bank was lost. He lost a great deal, but these things wouldn't matter until after his banishment. The one thing he could control, though, was when he could return. He would have to be escorted to Konoha by Jiraiya in order for him to return. And only Jiraiya would always be aware of Naruto's whereabouts. Naruto lifted the cup of noodles lid. After inserting his chopsticks, he began to eat. Abruptly, he let go of his chopsticks, causing the two wooden objects to drop to the ground. With a sigh, Naruto reached for his chopsticks and glanced down at his hand. It was trembling. Naruto's hand became clenched. It still shook, though. Naruto intended to depart from Konoha. He was homeless. Naruto twisted his face. He was no longer at home. He refused to see his pals. Naruto took a swipe at the noodle cup. The contents of the cup were spilled when it struck the window. It was the same window he had spent many years staring out of. With his hands on either side of his face, Naruto bowed his head. He trembled. He began to tremble. He let out a scream. He was going out of Konoha. There would be nowhere for him to live. It would be just the two of them. He was not going to be Hokage. His hopes were dashed. He had no hope. Naruto got to his feet and turned the table. The table he had spent many years eating at. He had placed multiple scrolls on the table for reading. The table fell to the ground, landing on an empty patch of floor. The area of the floor where he had trained chakra control. The floor area where, after a long day, he had devoted many hours of his time. Naruto spun around and continued to scream. He was dying piece by piece, and he was lost. Punching through a cupboard, Naruto advanced. The cabinet containing all of his food's ingredients. Crushing the counter, Naruto raised his hands and slammed down on it. The counter he'd prepared countless meals on. As he left Konoha, he would never return to his previous form as Naruto. Naruto pivoted and pounded his fists against the refrigerator. Wind chakra was now layered over his hand. It bored a flawless hole in it. Naruto didn't stop there, though. He persisted in pounding his fists into the refrigerator, creating flawless holes. Naruto dropped to his knees and covered his face with his hand. He was no longer Naruto. He was dying. He had vanished. As he left Konoha, inside Naruto's room, it began to rain. Naruto let out a scream. There was a sudden gust of wind in his apartment, shattering every glass and slicing through the ceiling, floors, and furniture. It was Naruto Uzumaki's death. The following day. As ridiculous as it may sound, the Angles were in tears. On the day he was leaving, it was pouring rain. Taking in his surroundings, he saw the village he was leaving. He descended his apartment's stairs. Over shattered glass, shattered wood, and shattered souls. He moved in the direction of the gates. He wished to bid her farewell one final time. However, it would be excessive. The pain would be unbearable. If he saw her, he would cry in front of her. If he was in front of her again, he would die. Rather, he chose to use Jiraiya to send a letter. As he approached the gate, he noticed something intriguing. He grinned. Some seemed incapable of keeping their mouths shut. The entire village now knew. Hinata. Her father had informed her that Naruto was moving out of the village. She desired to say goodbye to him. Hinata was not that naive to think she could overturn Akage's order, according to her father, who stated that the decision was final. Leaning against the distant wall, Hinata observed the procession. She stood by for some time. Subsequently, she caught sight of him. Clad in his standard jumpsuit, he strode solemnly in the direction of the gate. A majority split in front of him. A large number of them mocked and yelled at him. Hinata understood why. She was informed of the cause of his detest by many. She didn't detest him though. Hinata began to approach him to have a conversation. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Haim. Hinata whirled to face the recognizable voice. Why are you here? With a laugh, the man moved forward. But the two were being watched, without realizing it. A large number of nins, mostly clan leaders and their offspring, who had attended. Hinata had advanced, and any one of them could have gone to stop her. A clan heir greeting the Konoha pariah, or Konoha Exli, would be a chaotic scene. However, this required looking into because of the unexpected arrival of a newcomer who stopped Hinata. The man walked up to Hinata, sighing. He nodded his head in Naruto's direction and said, "You needn't worry yourself over him. He will be fine." Hinata cast a downward glance. I know, but I never really told him how I really felt." "That you loved him?" Hiyashi tensed up along with a few other nins. Hinata gave a slow nod. "Don't worry, you already have." Hinata was surprised and looked up. "What do you mean?" The man's hood was slightly raised, allowing some light to reach his face. She heard him whisper, "When the mail storm settles, it becomes the sky." Hinata looked forward, gasping at what she saw. All this time. The man drew his hood forward again and nodded. "I know. I wanted to get to know you better. I am sorry I had to lie to you." Hinata gave a headshake. "It doesn't matter. But do you?" He touched her lips with a finger. Hiyashi had the intention of going over and giving that person a serious smackdown. Sume turned to watch the scene unfold and appeared especially amused. The other clan leaders searched, looking perplexed. With a sigh, Hinata removed his finger from her mouth and spoke. "I love you." "I know," he nodded. They made their way ahead. Hiyashi began to move over there, having had enough. Suddenly, he was immobile. Hiyashi was abruptly compelled to turn away from the couple and head toward a sizable ninja troop. Hiyashi glared at the more experienced shadow leader. "What is the meaning of this? That scum is kissing my daughter." Shikaku let out a sigh. "It's too troublesome to get involved with them. Let them at least have this moment." Hiyashi gave him a glare. "Do you even know who that person is?" "I am not able to see past his hood. There is a jutsu there. He may have put her under genjutsu." Shikaku sighed again. "It's too troublesome to explain." Sume moved forward in an attempt to calm the enraged Hiyashi. "Think for a moment, Hiyashi. Who does Hinata like a lot?" Hiyashi halted and pivoted to face the Naruto, who appeared to be making his way toward the gate. Being made fun of by onlookers now. Hiyashi raised an eyebrow and turned back to face Sume. Shibi entered and declared, "The Naruto that is currently walking towards the gate is a Kage Bunshin." Sume smirked and started to laugh at Hiyashi for not realizing the man's identity sooner. Hiyashi blinked while taking it all in. Given that it was a phony Naruto, the man must be. Hiyashi turned and noticed that the couple had stopped talking. Hiyashi gave a glare, but he remained motionless. He would remain silent for the time being. Tsunade. Tsunade was working at her desk. She turned to watch the boy who had saved her go out of the gates. Though it would be customary to bid him farewell, she was unable to bear it. Tsunade pivoted and slumped into her chair. She had a lot of sake bottles on her desk. Shizune didn't even try to make fun of her for her excessive consumption. Shizune was sobbing uncontrollably in her room. Tsunade was consuming alcohol excessively. Though not in this way, she had lost a lot of people. One had been sent away by her. Naturally, she would heal, but the aching loss of her brother would never go away. But for the time being, rain poured down her face, just as it did outside. The man. His face was still hidden behind his hood. His Bunshin cage was nearly at the gate. That indicated that a show should begin. He was going to play one last trick on the people of Konoha. With a smile, Naruto turned to face Hinata. "It's almost time to go. I will miss you." Hinata gave a nod. He then became somewhat sober. "Hinata. I won't be back for a long time. And I know time will pass and people will move on, but will you wait for me?" A pause occurred. A stop, a suppressing of the mind, and acceptance. As she always did when she first met him, Hinata grinned at him. "Obviously, Naru. That's not my name," he said, placing his finger back on her lips. "My name is..." He leaned forward and softly whispered his new name, identity, and life after Naruto Uzumaki passed away today. After giving her a kiss on the cheek and enjoying her scent, he turned around and walked silently, unnoticed, towards the gate. Hinata watched him go at that point, and they both turned away from one another. This wasn't because they were angry or anything, but rather because they didn't want the other to see the tears that were streaming down their faces in waves of grief, loss, and despair. He walked, his steps growing heavier, but he forced himself to move forward because he wanted to walk for Konoha. When he returned, he would judge the citizens and Kami would assist them. Just a few yards from the gate, Naruto came to a stop, grinned broadly, and yelled, "Uzumaki Naruto is dead. Goodbye." Following that, there was a puff of smoke, silence, and then pandemonium. Where is he? The brat is gone. Residents and a few foolish ninjas were calling out, trying to find the boy. The man, clad in a black hood, moved slowly and stepped back from the crowd, a bulky travel pack resting on his back, something he would definitely need. He proceeded cautiously and slowly, almost reaching the gate. Everyone had turned their backs on it, so nobody should have even noticed his departure. Well, not if you counted the sharp ones, but even so, the ninjas who were able to sense him were probably cunning enough not to confront him. He continued walking until he heard something. "Naruto. What's your summary of your goals?" He waited for a moment, for this voice, though very familiar, was highly unlikely to be that of the person the voice belonged to. That person was most likely being watched over by Anbu. "I know you are wearing that hood, Naruto, so stop right there." He remained in the same spot, and now the rest of Konoha turned to see him standing at the gate, prepared to go. He heard footsteps land, and then some more around the first one. Oh, it appears that Sasuke had persuaded his guards to wave him off. Sasuke. When Sasuke first woke up, he didn't remember anything. He asked one of the Anbu in the room why he was being arrested, to which the Anbu responded curtly. Sasuke said he didn't remember, and the Anbu was pretty confused. Sasuke then explained his last memories of being knocked out from behind. After a while, the Anbu continued questioning him, this time bringing in an interrogator. It was the bandana man from the Chunin exams. He questioned Sasuke and found him to be not lying. Sasuke then asked about Naruto, and one of the Anbu informed him that Naruto was leaving the village. He begged on his knees to see him off. After an agonizing sprint across the rooftops, Sasuke arrived at Naruto's gates. Unaware of what the others were seeing, Sasuke could see that only one person was there. Sasuke yelled at the individual, who stopped, and then landed and began to yell once more. "Why are you doing this, Naruto? You're leaving the village, but why?" Sasuke spoke loudly but did not yell, saying, "I thought you wanted to become Hokage." It was more of a declaration than an irate interrogation. The man in the hoodie bowed his head before beginning to move forward once more. "Naruto, please don't leave." The hooded figure continued forward. Moving forward, Sasuke said, "Answer me, Naruto, why are you leaving?" Now that every citizen and ninja was staring at them, Sasuke caught up to the figure and grabbed his shoulder, saying, "Answer me, Naru." While everyone stared silently, Sasuke was thrown back several feet by a powerful gust of wind, and the Anbu leapt forward to grab hold of him. The hooded figure uttered, "There is no Naruto here." Raising to his feet, Sasuke let out a hoarse cry, "Bullshit. Don't play games with me, Naruto." Shaking his head, the hooded figure said, "My name is not Uzumaki Naruto. No, that is not my name. Naruto Uzumaki is deceased." Moving forward, Sasuke exclaimed, "So who the hell are you?" With a slow motion, the hooded figure reached up with his left hand and slowly pulled back his hood, revealing the blonde, spiky hair that had become so familiar to everyone, but his eyes remained closed as he raised his head to its fullest. A silent hush descended. The blonde let everyone see him open his eyes. Everyone then noticed golden eyes. "My name is..." The man with the golden eyes said loudly. Kira turned away and started walking towards the gate, but the Anbu stopped Sasuke from running after him. Following him, Sasuke screamed, "Don't leave, you idiot. Return here." As Hinata saw the man she loved pull away, she whispered to the sky, "Goodbye, Kira." Kira continued to walk along the meandering road, unsure of where it would lead, but certain that this was the start of his journey. It was the day that Kira left the Konoha gates and Naruto Uzumaki died. Many ninjas and citizens would talk about this day, describing it as a mystical occurrence of a young nin setting out on a legendary journey. At first, it would become rumors, then stories, and eventually a legend. A young lady left her house and ventured outside. The other night was a long one for her. No, not the enjoyable and pleasurable night. No, not the night she endured excruciating pain. No, it was a bloody, blade-filled night. The young lady left her house exhausted, not from the sword or the blood, but from the atmosphere. 10 years had passed since Konoha had changed so drastically. Few people remember, or would prefer not to, the days when the streets were filled with the deafening screams and cries of a certain name. Now it was much quieter. The young lady's hair was worn short. Before cutting it again, only allow it to reach shoulder length. She wasn't sure why she felt that way about it. Nobody expressed liking it in that way. It was a new habit for her. Perhaps it was in an attempt to honor someone. In any case, she moved in the direction of the place where girls imagine themselves going but never take a step. A place where would-be ninjas would love to stand fearlessly. The girl strolled by the vacant space. She found it amusing. She was reminded of her feelings by this location. It was so lifeless, so empty. She appeared to be waiting for something to cheer her up and give her energy. The young lady kept moving down the street in the direction of a particular home. She took a moment to study the wooden sliding door before pulling it open. She didn't even make an announcement about her presence because she was the only person who would come here aimlessly. Entering, she took a quick look around. Neither the living room nor the kitchen contained the person she was searching for. She moved over to the bedroom and peered in. She caught sight of him. She wasn't sure why, but she remained attached to this young man even after he had cost her one of her closest friends. She studied the toned body and the raven hair. But as time went on, she overcame his appearance and began to love him for himself. This was a man who loved his friends dearly, even though he didn't always show it. This man was so preoccupied with his concern that he failed to notice her entry. Gazing downward, the man held a picture in his hand. It was an antique photograph. These photos, which were taken roughly 10 years ago, showed an older nin who had recently tied the knot, a much younger man, and a much younger woman. She was aware, though, that the boy was the object of the young man's attention. The boy who was missed by everyone in the photo. The boy who had brightened their world for so long had vanished, leaving no trace behind. Despite multiple recon missions, they had not been able to locate him. Sasuke, the woman said, sighing as she spoke. Slowly, the man raised his head and fixed his gaze on her. The female turned her head back. The pain in this man's eye was visible to her. She knew what he would sacrifice to make this boy his friend again. Silently, the man called Sasuke said, "He ought to be here." "I ought not to. We have moved past this." Sakura shook her head. "Everyone ought to be present." Sasuke gave a nod. Yes, they had discussed this topic numerous times. They looked at this photo together for a long time, into the night and into agony. Though they had yearned to see him, their plans did not work out. Not at least not yet. They had been longing to see the boy in the photo for 10 years. He goes by Kira now, but his previous name was Naruto. Unknown territory. When a young man opened his eyes, the ceiling looked familiar. Ever since he moved into this place, roughly 10 years ago, he had been opening his eyes to this ceiling. The young man stood and extended his limbs. He grinned and embraced the new day. In order to avoid disturbing the people who were still asleep in the vicinity, the man dressed quietly. He pulled on his cargo pants and shirt. He securely fastened his preferred weapon on himself. He straightened his peculiarly layered hair and examined his peculiarly hued eyes in the mirror. The young man went outside to see his tea. Drinking master of 10 years. His boss gave him a raised eyebrow and a nod. The young man focused instantly, seeing the serious expression on his master's face. His master sighed and put down his tea. "It is time." The young man's eyes widened. "You mean Arrow? Senin?" His teacher gave a nod. "Jiraiya has indeed arrived. You should leave for Konoha at this time." Konoha. An abrupt shift frequently arrived and vanished like the wind. Konoha's transformation was something that was still happening and very much on their minds. They were about to go to war. The next great war was about to begin. Fortunately, Kiri and Kumo, graciously, offered their assistance in keeping Otto under control after it decided to flex its muscles a little. Even if they were led by a renowned Sannin, Otto wouldn't even attempt to battle 3 significant villages at once, so the conflict wasn't entirely resolved. All of that, however, is background. Konoha has always sensed change. It could be the freezing terror of the Kyuubi, the rain that cried out as Konoha's laughter faded, or even this moment when the summer breeze began to pick up. Konoha was about to change. A wealthy estate. A young lady got out of bed. She had on her evening kimono. It was a birthday present from her cousin, which she had received. She noticed the same boring things everywhere she looked in her room. However, she did notice something off to the side. It was a tea set, tucked away neatly in the corner. The tea set was extremely old and had not been used in a decade. The young woman approached and knelt beside the tea set. She brushed off a bit of dust that had settled on it and grinned. Later on, she would have to clean it once more. The woman rose, putting on her robes. Even though she had grown older, became more self-assured and fiercer, she nevertheless had some of her former traits. The young lady turned and headed for the Maki neighborhood. Today she was going to have dinner with a friend. As she moved through the hallways, a number of her relatives bowed down to her in an open manner. She gave them a nod and reminded them that they were under no obligation to bow to her. She continued to approach and pass through the gates. And she drew attention once more as she made her way toward the Maki neighborhood. She assumed it was obvious why they were discussing her. Numerous men spoke about her beauty in creative ways, or even sang about it. Her fair skin, beautiful eyes, or even her flowing hair would be discussed. They would sing of her innocence and kindness, though she would just slink away from this thought because it became bothersome. But they would still talk about her despite the fact that she turned down so many people. She was also able to hear the murmurs. That's Hinata Hyuga, that famous heir to the clan. Yay, she's beautiful, isn't she? Of course, but it's a shame, she hasn't accepted any suitors. On the inside, Hinata scoffed. She had accepted a suitor already. She had been engaged for 10 years, but it was only in spirit. She continued to wait, hoping to see the ghost of the boy she adored. She had no idea when he would return. Nevertheless, she was aware that she would wait for him. Hinata proceeded to travel through the Maki districts. Konoha had not changed much. The people and shops had changed, but the city's energy remained constant and busy. No sun to brighten the day and leave people wondering what wild thing might occur next. No, this was just another dull situation. Hinata proceeded to walk towards Sakura's residence. Sakura's residence. For quite some time, the Blood Blossom had been living alone. After a young boy left, she had isolated herself for several months and barely spoke to anyone. No one would dare break through her door, even if they remained outside her house for days on end. They were aware of her suffering. Not until her current boyfriend gradually helped her come out of her shell. When Hinata knocked on the door, she was greeted with the exuberant, "Coming." It took Hinata a mere second to notice that the door was opened. A woman with pink hair unlocked the door. She had a red vest on over her white shirt. In addition to her service related memento, she had on Anbu pants and her trademark black gloves with a yellow gem adorning each side fastened to her belt. She had recently washed them due to the noticeable bloodstains, which were quite bothersome as they constantly formed crusts. Sakura's smile widened upon seeing Hinata. "Hey. How are you doing? Come in, breakfast is on the table." With a smile, Hinata entered. Hinata glanced around, noticing the pictures hanging on the walls. Old pictures of a former team or group. The individuals in each of them belonged to the same generation. Hinata took a seat at the little table that Sakura had strewn with food. Sakura came in with a few plates and called. "Sasuke is on his way." Is this a special occasion?" Hinata asked with a raised eyebrow. "After we eat, Shisho asked me to bring you and Sasuke up to the tower." Something about showing a person around, Sakura shrugged. Her voice sounded constricted, as though someone had wrapped a garrote wire around her vocal cords. Hinata let out a sigh, her eyebrows furrowing in frustration as she felt her stomach tighten like a python's grip. Yes, she had previously done this. Oh, how fucking many times. Act dignified, speak in a formal tone, laugh in a polite manner. Sitting there and chatting with politicians who wanted to meet renowned heirs, or nins, was so horrible. Hinata started in with a thick bowl of miso soup that had the flavor of angel food. There was a voice at the door. "Hey guys." When Sasuke opened the door, Hinata didn't even raise an eyebrow. He approached Sakura, who was just beginning to eat some rice, and sat down next to her. Sasuke's hair had grown longer, but he felt free to wear a yellow band to tie it off. He was dressed in a long, gray jacket with a high collar and sleeves. Beneath his red shirt, the Uchiha symbol was displayed with pride. His orange, hilted katana was one of several weapons included in a scroll edition that he carried in his black shorts. With a sigh, Sasuke picked up a bowl and his chopsticks. With irritation and disgust in his voice, he said, "Another day with a politician." Hinata nodded, echoing his thoughts. In order to get to the Hokage Tower, the three of them eat their food. Gates. A man approached the gates with another man, who was younger. The two continued past the gates and down the hill. The younger man had a hood over his face, so neither of the two guard keepers recognized him as the fabled Sannin. However, the older guard kept their distance from the younger one right away. The Hokage was informed right away by Kazu, a new Chunin, that the guest had arrived with Jiraiya. Now the young man with Jiraiya was surveying his surroundings. The man studied the layout, ingrained it in his memory. "It's different." Jiraiya gave a nod. "What do you expect? How long has it been since you've been a village?" The young man shrugged a little. 10 years. "I don't know how your master put up with you," sighed Jiraiya. Jiraiya was kicked in the back of the knee by the young man. "Oi! I have you know master is a patient man. And I wasn't that bad." Jiraiya gave him a sneer. "I remember when I visited you almost took out a whole entire building. Your master had to use his ability to stop you from destroying everything." With a sigh, the young man said, "I was still new back then." With a sigh, Jiraiya moved in the direction of the tower and Hokage monument. "Anyways, the tower is this way." With a nod, the young man followed Jiraiya. Office of Hokage. In front of Suande, Sakura, Sasuke, and Hinata were at parade rest. They remained motionless while they awaited the politician's briefing. Tsunade turned to face the letter in front of them, then looked up. Tsunade exclaimed, "It's not a politician." A palpable tremor of relaxation spread among the three nins. With doubts in her mind, Sakura asked her Shisho, "Who is it then?" With a shrug, Tsunade said, "Jiraiya said he needed to show a kid around." Sasuke gave a nod. "Why the three of us then? Why not some Chunin?" Tsunade sighed and continued, "You were requested. Said something about wanting to meet you or something like that." Jiraiya was all hush about the date, so I guess he has his reason. "I will do it, but may I be put on another scout?" Sasuke asked, nodding. "No. You've done over 500 of them in the past 5 years. And every time you lead your damn team on a fucking escapade to the other side of the world." "I will say it once more, no." Tsunade said with a twitching eyebrow. Regardless of how much she wanted the boy to be found, she didn't want to even consider the number, which was probably over 1,000, or the number of times Sasuke would use an excuse to look up some rumor about the lost boy. Though grudgingly, Sasuke thought to himself, gritting his teeth, "I did find some leads though." Tsunade felt a tremor in her chakra and turned towards the door. Jiraiya entered after unlocking the door. The visitor caught the attention of all three nins. A young man in a hood entered. He was wearing a black hoodie with a gray hood and black cargo pants. He was just as tall as Sasuke, but no one could see past the hood's shadow, which completely obscured his face. The new enigma gave a cursory glance to Sakura, Hinata, and Sasuke before turning to face Tsunade. Although he didn't appear to be carrying any weapons, the man exuded the kind of careful warrior demeanor. When Jiraiya saw Tsunade and the nins, he grinned and said, "Good you're all here." Jiraiya nodded as Hinata, Sakura, and Sasuke greeted the well known nin. Tsunade gave the hooded man in the back a nod. "Is this your person?" Jiraiya gave a nod. "Yes. There are some things I want to discuss while we are here." Tsunade leaned back in her chair and shrugged. "Shoot." After giving a slow nod, Jiraiya said, "I want this kid to join Konoha's ranks." A silence fell over the room. Nobody said anything. Everyone processed the previous information. The boy with the hood spoke up first, and it surprised everyone by saying, "Arrow." Senin. His voice was rough but still young. It was more akin to a violin rather than scratchy or anything. When used correctly, it was melodic, but when not, it could be irritating. However, the word did not cause the mood to change. The young man's comment caused the present nins to relive past experiences. "Is this what?" With a slow nod, Jiraiya interrupted the boy. Yes, I spoke with him about it. Alright, then, Jiraiya said, turning to face Tsunade. Jiraiya gestured to Sasuke and said, I want to test him, not just ask him to join. Sasuke stiffened up instantly. He knew Jiraiya was aware of his abilities. Did that imply that the boy could match his strength? If that's the case, they ought to be aware of him. A cage-level ninja is not something you see every day, and those who are at that level should at the very least be the subject of rumors, unless they have spent the last 10 years living in a cave. Tsunade raised her arms to face Jiraiya, looking them both in the eye. This is not something you ask every day. Jiraiya gave a shrug. I'm sure you need all the help you can get. With Otto preparing for war and all. Slowly nodding, Tsunade took in the words. Jiraiya was making a suggestion that Otto might form an alliance with a higher village. That could put them in danger. Tsunade returned her focus to the work at hand. Is that why you requested him? Then what about the other two? Jiraiya gave a shrug. The kid requested them on his own. He wanted to meet Hinata and Sakura. At their names, the two Kanuchi pricked awake. How was it that this kid knew them? The man in question turned to face the nins now. His body language conveyed to them that he was closely examining them. And with that, the boy turned to face them. The man nodded to them but did not immediately say anything. The nins, who had been holding their breath for unknown reasons, said, You may call me Red. My friends call me that, so you may also. However, they quickly dispelled their unease and false hope as they greeted him. Hinata gave a slow nod. It's nice to meet you as well. Sakura sensed Hinata's hesitation and stepped in, but she was uncomfortable too. My name is Haruno Sakura. Red gave her a nod. Uchiha Sasuke? He asked as he turned to face Sasuke. Sasuke gave a nod, but his mind was still awash in questions about who the hell this guy was. Red turned to Hinata at last. The boy looked at her and paused, and you must be. Hinata sensed a nudge in her abdomen. For what reason was he halting? Hyuga Hinata. Sama. You don't need to call me, ma'am, Hinata said without thinking, sounding like she was speaking with a member of her branch. Hinata became aware of her error and prepared to fix it when. I insist, Hinata. Sama, I have a debt so to say. The room froze for the second time, there was a pause. Sakura turned her gaze from the boy to Hinata and back again. Why was she called Sama by him? Slowly, Hinata said, a debt you say? Red gave a nod. Yes, though I am not able to discuss it right now, I can tell you this was the reason why I requested to meet you. Hinata was also wondering something else in the back of her mind. However, she refrained from saying it so as to avoid inadvertent offense. After giving himself a nod, Red faced Jiraiya. Everything like you said. Backing Jiraiya's nod. Didn't I tell you? Not a single thing out of place. The mystery man in front of them was grinning, as far as the nins in the room could tell, as he turned to face Hinata. Anyways, I'm in your care because I'm very new here, Red went on. Again, Red bent his head in the direction of Hinata. Hinata began to realize that she had been selected to be his guide, and she blinked. Then Jiraiya looked up at Tsunade. Let's have a sparring match to test his skill, say 10 o'clock at training ground 7. Tsunade let out a sigh. Fine, but you better tell me what the hell is going on. Just shrugging, Jiraiya said, in due time. Tsunade pivoted to face the younger cohort and dismissed them with a wave. Out you go, kids. Quietly, the youths departed the room. Red left quickly after Hinata. Outside. At that moment, Sasuke wanted to turn around and give the guy behind him a hard time. He was curious about this guy's identity. How was Jiraiya known to him? How did he find out who they were? Although he was among the final Uchihas, not many people outside the village were able to identify him at first glance. Furthermore, how did he know Sakura or Hinata? Sasuke glanced over his shoulder. Red was exploring the area like a tourist, despite the man's nimble demeanor. Sasuke turned back to Sakura, who gave him a familiar, uncomfortable look. She also sensed a strange feeling. As soon as they reached a few blocks away from the Hokage Tower, Sasuke stopped and turned around. Though Red seemed a little slow, Sakura and Hinata also stopped and took a few steps forward before turning to face them. Yes, Nin. Sans. Sasuke gave a throat clearance. I was wondering how you knew Jiraiya. Sama. Red nodded once more as if to confirm his own ideas. Ah, I knew him from a coincidental meeting. It was an invigorating sight when he beat up my current teacher. Quite a funny accident really. From there we got along splendidly. Can't say that we kept in touch all that often because the place I lived was out of civilization. Sakura moved up front. Out of civilization. Red replied, yes, quite out of place. Very hard to get to. I cannot tell the exact details because it is forbidden. Sasuke tightened his jaw. Although he had heard similar rumors in the past, he never found them convincing enough to follow up on, which was saying something because Sasuke would jump at shadows more than a trigger. Happy war veteran. However, his story fit the description of what he had heard. Then a growl from the stomach broke through the awkwardness. Red let his head drop a little and put a hand on his stomach. Sasuke coughed and said, "Ah, excuse me, this is so embarrassing. I know a good place to eat. Do you have any particular favorites?" Red raised his head slightly, thoughtfully. "Well, I did hear of one restaurant in Konoha I had to try." "Yeah, tell me," yelled Hinata. "Ichiraku's ramen," Red said with a slight head tilt as he glanced at her. Later. The three nins never imagined returning to this location. They had driven by this restaurant numerous times and had even made donations to support the establishment, but they had never eaten there. As their guests sat down and perused the menu, they watched. He scanned the menu from top to bottom and muttered to himself as though he wasn't sure what to do. Hinata gazed upon the mystery, a question ringing in her head. If nothing else, Sakura and Sasuke quickly struck up a conversation among themselves to avoid having to face the fact that they were missing someone. Hinata. Chan, it's been a while. Hinata glanced over the counter and saw that Tucci, the elderly man, was still very much alive. Tucci. San, I am sorry I have not been here in a while. I have been busy as of late. Tucci made a hand motion. Tucci nodded to the new client. I see you brought someone else? Do not worry, business is good. With a nod, Hinata said, he is Jiraiya's friend. Tucci stopped and turned to face the hooded gentleman, laughing. That guy, he has been around here ordering a bowl for himself. Now then sir, how can I help you? Tucci. San. Red nodded to the man as he looked up. Tucci froze, having never revealed his name to the man. After stepping back, Tucci asked, that is your name, correct? And nodded. And how did you know my name, sir? Red ignored Tucci and didn't respond. Father, are there any more orders? The ramen chef's daughter, Ayame, came to the counter to take orders. Red gave the woman a nod. You must be Ayame. San. Ayame gave the man a startled look. You know me, customer, San. Red gave a nod. Yes, I do. I have heard of you from a friend who recommended me this shop. Tucci and Ayame took in the information with slow nods. Long ago, Sasuke and Sakura had put their conversation on hold to hear this revelation. Red asked, is it okay that I have one of everything? As he cast a downward glance at the menu. Ayame and Tucci went cold. Oh. One of everything. But that's over 20 bowls, Hinata said as she opened her mouth. With a shrug, Red said, my friend told me I should try every bowl. So I should. If it's about money, and he produced a solid brick of gold from inside his jacket. I have this to compensate. Now, everyone in the booth was fixated on the gold. Even though it measured only 10 by 5 by 4 centimeters, it was still worth much more than 100 bowls. Customer. San. I cannot compensate for that much, Tucci stammered out after taking a quick glance at the bar. Red placed the bar on the counter and pushed it in Tucci's direction, shaking his head. I have a debt, so to say, to repay to this restaurant. I insist that you take it all. Tucci glanced at Red, then back at the gold bar. Sir, I cannot. It wouldn't be fair to you. This is a small price to pay if the food is good, Red said, shaking his head. Please. Red got up and took the bar, putting it in Tucci's hand. Tucci glanced at the bar he was holding and took a slow grip. Tucci nodded, looking up. Then I will cook the best ramen you've ever tasted. With a broad smile, Red said, I'm excited about it. Tucci and Ayame started preparing the 27 ramen bowls. Red watched the bowls cook, patiently. While their hearts told them that Red wasn't the person they were looking for, Hinata, Sasuke, and Sakura continued to stare at him. Sasuke was at his breaking point. Red. Red looked over at Sasuke. Yes, Sasuke. San? After holding his breath, Sasuke spoke slowly. I was wondering, have you ever eaten here before? Red gently shook his head. No, I have not, this is the first time I have been here. Sasuke clenched his fist and nodded slowly. Then what about this debt you say you have to pay? Red placed a hand on his chin and continued to think. It is from another person. Later. They had shown Red where you would be staying after they had eaten. Sakura and Sasuke reluctantly went to report for duty. Red assigned her sister Hanabi and cousin Neji to fill in for Hinata, leaving her to stay with her. It didn't surprise them because they were accustomed to it. Red was moving in the direction of the Hokage monument now. Slowly trailing behind was Hinata, whose feelings were erupting inside her like a vortex. She was more mature than that, though at first she wanted to rip off the hood or beg for explanations. He would have told if he was him. If not, then whatever. When they arrived at the top, Red took in the surroundings. He studied the scene in front of him, hands tucked into his pockets. He looked at everything, the trees, buildings, and the night sky. He cherished the brilliant moonlight. The moon was always visible to him, no matter where he was. After approaching him from the side, Hinata moved past him and perched on the head of the fourth. Red observed her before approaching from behind. Instead of taking a seat, he just stood behind her. Hinata cast a mischievous glance at the moon. Even if the person she told was a complete stranger, she was unable to control herself and had to tell them. I had my first kiss here, you know. Red remained silent. Bowing her head, Hinata went on. It was when I was 13 or so, I was really young back then. So naive to the world and all its horrors. Hinata raised her gaze to the sky. He was so kind. So gentle. He always stood up for his belief and never backed down. He was like a ball of sunshine that never ceased. Red spoke slowly, as though he was afraid someone would expose him. What happened? He, exiled himself. For reasons I do not pretend to know. But I do know one thing. Red just stared at Hinata without responding. Hinata pivoted to gaze at him. He told me to wait for him, and I did, I still am. Hinata laughed. Silly, isn't it? I haven't told anyone this because they might call me foolish to follow my first love. But I can't but help but think he will return to me, someday. Hinata raised her head and sighed. Red said something quietly. You are not foolish. You are faithful. Hinata. Sama. Hinata gave a headshake. You do not have to call me that. I insist. And if I may. Might I know this boy's name? Red said, shaking his head as well. Hinata nodded and uttered hushed words. The boy's name was Kira. Red remained silent. The two were silent to each other. Then Red took a very surprising action. Red bent over, the way a nin or a samurai would submit to their ruler. Hinata raised her voice and said, Red, what are you? Hinata. Sama. Red said in a firm tone. Hinata cut herself off and paid attention to what Red had to say. Red bowed his head in her direction. On the souls of my family and on the honor of my name, I swear to you, no harm shall come to you until you meet Kira once more. Hinata felt tears welling up in her eyes. Why? Hinata experienced an emotional outburst. She was curious as to why. She was curious as to WHO. She was curious as to what. All she could ask, despite her many questions, was why. Because. As you have stayed faithful to Kira. Kira has stayed faithful to you, Red said, keeping his head bowed. Red smirked away as Hinata gasped and was ready to demand explanations. Hinata broke down in tears and went to her knees. She was unsure if it came from joy or heartache. A specific apartment. Red entered a specific apartment and took a look around. He strolled among the shattered glass and ruined furnishings. It appeared that nobody would enter the demon's flat. Red glanced around and saw what he was searching for. Red approached the table that had been turned over and raised it. He moved the table carefully to one side, glancing down at a picture frame. Red crouched down and focused on one thing, sifting through the jumbled memories of this apartment. Red took up the photo and examined the 10-year-old image. It featured a sensei with one eye covered by a headband. It had an angry, irritated look on its face. A bookworm with pink hair stood off to the side of it, And a small boy who appeared to be very angry stood in the center. Red glanced at it and grinned. After putting the photo in his pocket, he addressed the wind. As you have said, I have come. When Red awoke, the ceiling was unusual. Where, he finally recalled. It was the Konoha nins that sent him here. Red yawned and stood up. He noticed that he had set his jacket aside and blinked once. Red took hold of it and pulled on the hood. He'd gotten it from Jiraiya the previous year. Jiraiya made him a new jacket because the old one had long since stopped fitting him. He laughed at Arrow. Senin when he realized that he had really sewed the jacket, but naturally, later on, Red complimented him on how comfortable it was. Red rolled out of bed and took in his surroundings. That place was very different from his own home. To the right, close to the window, was a tiny table. It had a lamp on it, allowing people to write if they so desired. Red didn't like how plain the white bed was, even though it was pretty comfortable. A tiny coffee table, which appeared to be worn but was still in good shape, was placed next to the bed. Red went into the kitchen to see what food he could prepare. Curiously, there were pots and pans prepared for him already, and the kitchen was fully stocked. Red shrugged and took the pans off the sill of the cupboard. After setting them down, he entered the refrigerator from behind. Taking 2 eggs and some butter, he began to cook as his master had instructed. His mentor advised learning to cook because, let's not get started, eating the same thing every day or not knowing how to cook would not be healthy. Red shuddered at his master's lengthy explanation of what a healthy diet entailed. Outside. Red stepped outside the apartment and opened his eyes right away. 4 people were observing him. Hinata. Sama was among them, but the other 3 appeared tense. Red would have killed them by now if they had been hostile. No, these folks were holding out for him to initiate contact. Red said to himself, Anbu. Red saw Hinata. Sama waiting for him as he descended the stairs. Red bowed down and Hinata nodded at him. Hinata. Sama. Hinata sighed instead of responding. Her voice faltered for a moment before saying, I will not, about him for now. But I will ask you, Sasuke and Sakura, to tell me after the test. Red gave a nod. Of course Hinata, Sama. Red got up, waiting for Hinata to start moving. After giving Red a long look, Hinata turned and started to move in the direction of a field. Red surveyed the village. He had seen this kind of village before, but he was used to smaller buildings in his own home, so it was very different from what he was used to. However, one aspect of this town that he found objectionable. The individuals appeared to be strange to one another. They avoided talking to their neighbors, much as they disliked them. As if all these folks wanted to do was move on with their lives. They were unwilling to savor each other's company. Red was not at all fond of this. For the past 10 years, he had lived with people who were totally honest with him, able to share their happiness, sadness, and excitement. This location was very different from Konoha. Red moved quickly behind Hinata, about a foot away. To avoid giving the impression that they were a couple, they should avoid being too close or too far apart. No, Hinata was just his guide, but while he watched Hinata, Red couldn't help but get a feeling in his stomach. That's exactly what he had in mind. The idea that memories could endure for so long was pretty astounding. When the two descended into a field, they discovered Tsunade, Sakura, and Sasuke were waiting for them. I hope you were not waiting long? Red asked, giving them a nod. With a shake of her head, Tsunade said, No, we just arrived. Good timing. Red gave another nod. Sakura and Hinata moved forward together. Sakura saw the tenseness in her friend's arms. Sakura asked, What's wrong, Hinata? Hinata nodded her head, It's nothing Sakura, it's something, for later. I don't want to talk about this right now. I am unsure of what to do. Sakura observed her friend lowering her gaze to the floor. Sakura was starting to get anxious. There weren't many occasions when she'd seen her friend like this. Once Kira had left, she had seen it. She had noticed it occasionally when Hinata would glance at the Ichiruka ramen. Only after Kira was mentioned did Hinata change to this state. Sakura touched her shoulder and said, Just know that I'm here for you, okay? Hinata smiled a little. I know Sakura, for 10 years now. I've known. Suande stepped forward, prepared to discuss the match's regulations, but Jiraiya materialized out of nowhere. Let me handle this. Jiraiya involuntarily smoked. His expression was neutral, leaving no space for debate. "What are you doing, Jiraiya?" Tsunade asked, raising an eyebrow. Jiraiya waved Tsunade away with a sly smile. "Don't worry, I got this." Tsunade gave a slow nod and turned to face the line of trees. There is a fighting space within the clearing. All weapons are permitted, but Jiraiya yelled loudly, glancing between Sasuke and Red before turning to face Sasuke. Nodding, Sasuke wasn't upset when he was told, "Sasuke, you cannot use Chidori or any other killing moves you learned." This was what he had anticipated. Since this was only a ranking and not a deathmatch, there was no purpose in using killing techniques. Nor did it really test your skill if all you did was overwhelm your opponent. Sasuke wasn't being conceited or haughty. This was a fact. He was aware of his strength. He was aware that his deadly moves could subdue a large number of opponents. With a sigh, Jiraiya turned to face Red. As though he had anticipated it, Red nodded and said, "Red, you cannot use the Hell Flames." Sasuke became intrigued, wondering if this person used flames? What on earth were Hell Flames? "Dragon Dance," Jiraiya went on, and Red nodded again, this time anticipating it. Red said, "And Burning Dance." At this point, Burning Dance? But that's my... Jiraiya gave Red a scowl. "You are here to be tested, we do not need that type of destruction." "But it's my main style," Red growled. Jiraiya furrowed his brow. He thought it might be a good idea to test you. "He is allowing you to use the Flowing Flame Kata." Red was about to begin. "And you may use the Apocalypse Rain if necessary." Red paused, quiet. Under his hood, Hinata would have said that he was grinning right now. At last, Jiraiya added, "And only level 3. Red stiffened. "You have got to be shitting me." He would never say that. Sasuke is strong. That is more than enough. Red was silenced when Jiraiya stomped his foot on the ground. "I do not need your competitiveness to be here. This is my restriction." Red came to a halt and gave a nod. "Fine." Sasuke turned to face Red, and he looked back. Sasuke's head was aflutter. Who was this man's master? And how was he known to Jiraiya? Was he referring to this other master? "Begin." Jiraiya yelled as she leapt back. Most lower nins, such as genins or even chunins, would anticipate a spectacular jutsu to open a high-level battle. However, that is untrue. As you ascend to a higher level, things begin to peak. Every nin follows a particular curve. A single move could reveal the strategy, or a subtle change in tactics could turn the tide of war. Little things became significant. Little things were what made the difference in battles. Great nins are skilled fighters. Renowned ninjas were expert fighters. And only the sharpest could attempt to predict their opponent's next move. Which is exactly what's happening now. It would appear from the scene that there is a standoff, but that was not the case. Red appeared to be staring at Sasuke as she stood there. With all 3 Tomo in attendance, Sok has also revealed his Sharingan. Red took 2 steps back and bided his time. Sasuke did not react. Or made no real movement at all, save from the fact that his other hand was now at his side in a half-seal and that his right hand had moved closer to the katana on his back. Red held up his hand to the sky. His hand curled as though he was holding something, palm down. Sasuke and Red both tensed. Abruptly, a red flame burst horizontally from Red's hand. Sasuke's eyes filtered out the light, not even blinking. Red's hands held a pristine katana when the flame subsided. The katana was really peculiar. In fact, it appeared more like a ceremonial blade than a deadly one. The hilt was finished with an empty slot at the end and 4 crystals adorning it. The sword's visible guard was absent. As opposed to Sasuke, who favored carrying a tiny diamond hilt so that, in an emergency, he could employ Iijutsu. Even stranger was the blade itself. For the first few inches, it was thick like a typical katana, but it seemed like someone had cut off the top half of the blade. The sharp edge was all that was left after the dull side had completely vanished. Sasuke's gaze narrowed as he studied the sword. By all accounts, it couldn't be normal. Though he had witnessed people with seal tattoos on their bodies, he had never witnessed a summoning quite like this. Furthermore, this man had no tattoos on him. Though he could see the chakra encircling the sword, it didn't look like the chakra he had previously seen. Instead, it felt more erratic, wild. With a bowed head, Red murmured, "Flame Kai." The missing blade's dull side suddenly reappeared, but this time it was completely covered in flames. It appeared as though a stream of fire connected the blade's point to the hilt. Flashy? Sasuke asked, raising an eyebrow. Sasuke began to manipulate his arm as he focused chakra through it. Electricity shot through the blade of his sword. Sasuke slightly bowed his lower leg and extended his left leg. He held up his left arm, ready for anything. Until Red spoke, it appeared to be a standoff once more. You might want to be careful of that leg. It's on fire. Smelling burning cloth, Sasuke blinked and jumped back, looking down at his legs. His right leg was indeed ablaze. Patting it out, Sasuke swore to himself. What had taken place? Why had he not noticed the chakra? He was observing every chakra that Red was adjusting. With Red closing in on him and swinging his flaming blade with the speed of a samurai, Sasuke was left speechless. Hinata observed Sasuke and Red engage in combat. She blurted, "How did he do that?" Sakura, standing next to her, gave a nod. Yay, he lit Sasuke's pants from far away. Spontaneous combustion, but how? Suhant, who stood behind the two ninjas, turned to Jiraiya in search of clarification. The kid used a simple trick. It's basic for people like him, Jiraiya smirked. Hinata and Sakura turned. Sakura asked, curious since she had never heard of or seen anything like this before. What do you mean? She asked. Jiraiya gave the sword a nod. When he lit his sword, he used chakra to burn the pants. Hinata cocked her head sideways. But I was watching for chakra. How did it happen? With a smile that suggested he was amusing himself, Jiraiya turned to face Hinata. What happened? What did you see? Hinata cast a thoughtful glance down. I saw the chakra around Sasuke's pants squeeze together and then it lit. But it didn't seem like it was from Red because he didn't transfer any chakra over there. Jiraiya gave a nod. He didn't transfer chakra, yes, but that doesn't mean to say that he didn't manipulate the chakra around Sasuke's legs. Suad's gaze expanded. This was not the first time she had heard it. This was something Jiraiya had mentioned to her upon his return from the Toad training. Elemental control. With a smile, Jiraiya nodded. Yes. Sakura spoke up, her mind already formulating a plan. Do you mean influencing others? Manipulation would control something of an exchange. Jiraiya shook his head. Chakra is given to move the elements. All that's needed for control is mental capacity and a deep connection to the earth. Turning to face Red, Hinata said, so he has it? How do you go about doing this? After a brief moment of silence, Jiraiya said, you sever all bonds. Sasuke. Sasuke parried as the sword aimed for his shoulders, thinking to himself, this guy is not even attacking vitals, huh? This was a fun opponent. Sasuke could see Red's openings and they were tiny. This person was obviously well trained. It took years of practice to lower the openings made, that are life and death situations, which Sasuke had been in. Sasuke went through several hand seals with his left hand and slashed downward with his right to create some pause with Red. Sasuke puffed up his chest as he felt the chakra surge in his body. Sasuke opened his mouth and thought to himself, water style, crushing waterfall. A huge gorge of water came out of his mouth and went straight at Red, hitting Red dead on as Sasuke had predicted. Sasuke jumped away from the steam cloud and looked at it, feeling a heat behind him and his eyes widening. He ducked as a burst of flame came from behind. Sasuke rolled out of the way as a blade of flame crashed down where his foot had just been. Sasuke could tell Red was having fun because he was standing in the middle with his hood still up and his blade still flaming in the middle. Sasuke landed on the ground with grace and continued to watch Red, not realizing that he was smiling. It had been a long time since he had met such an amazing opponent. Rookies usually move backwards, and veterans weave to change the angle and find openings. Sasuke suddenly ducked under a counter and spun around, letting loose one of his signature moves, Lightning Release, Static Burst, from his sword. A small miniature lightning storm hit Red dead on. Static Burst wasn't deadly, but it hurt like a bitch to anyone receiving it no matter how much you tried to defend. Ow, Red exclaimed, launching himself backward and swaying his right arm. Smirking, Sasuke said, that was one of my favorite tricks. Interesting, but that water wave was a joke, Red said, nodding. Chakra was hardly concentrated at all. It merely had enhancement. Sasuke blinked. You sure about that? It took a significant chakra from any regular nin, even though he hadn't put much chakra into the technique. Sasuke raised his sword and allowed his chakra to imbue thunder into it once more. Red smiled. Let me show you a technique with real chakra. Sasuke nearly raised an eyebrow at the flashiness when Red leapt up and flipped in midair, but he quickly realized why he was flipping. In just one flip, he had collected chakra in a loop, and now he was falling with a ring of chakra encircling his sword. As he swung forward, Red yelled, "Ring of Dante." The ring charged at Sasuke, who dodged it and turned to watch its destruction for a brief moment. Sasuke's eyes widened when he saw that the ring had destroyed at least 27 patches of trees, leaving only charred remains. Sasuke turned back to Red and growled, "That could have killed me." Red said, shaking his head, "I didn't mean to hit you." Red advanced to meet Sasuke as he rolled his eyes and then charged again. Jiraiya. Under his breath, Jiraiya muttered, "He's getting caught up in the moment." Turning to face Jiraiya, Tsunade said, "He's good." "Yes, I am aware," Jiraiya nodded. A few times along the way, but the child handled the majority of the work alongside his master. Tsunade blinked. "How did you get back together with him?" "Like I said last night, I met his master then him," Jiraiya remarked. With expectant eyes, Tsunade asked Jiraiya, "Who is his master?" After pausing as though he was thinking about telling her, Jiraiya turned to face Red, who was now being pushed back by Sasuke, and said, "It is his choice to tell." When Jiraiya saw Red take action, he stopped. Hinata exhaled, and his flame began to turn white. Jiraiya's eyes narrowed. "That's it." Reaching into his pocket, Jiraiya took a step forward. Red. Red was enjoying himself immensely. This guy was good. Great, he was absolutely amazing. Yes, he was being forced to go a little harder than he was supposed to, but this was amazing. He had never before had he been able to fight like this. With someone on even terms. Either the people he faced would crush him horribly, or he would hold back. This guy, he was at his level, or he was beyond Red. Red was ecstatic as he parried and ducked. He had to take this to level 4. He could not just leave it at level 3. Red leapt backward from Sasuke and directed his attention towards the 4th gem on his sword, causing his flames to slow down and become still. Although it appeared as though the flames were dying down, they were actually riveting up, and they were now intensifying and focused in a small area. As Red began to charge forward, he thought to himself, "Let's do this." Sasuke had taken a defensive stance and was breathing heavily, and Red was breathing heavily too. Abruptly, Jiraiya materialized before him holding a well-known scroll. Red thought, "Shit." Jiraiya yelled, "Kai." Red held his breath, froze in place, and then the air around him vanished, and there was no wind at all. The flames all went out because there was no oxygen left for them to burn, and Red stood there for 2 seconds before the wind returned, dropping to his knees in a trembling heap. Red yelled, "Arrow. Sennin, what the hell?" while glaring at Jiraiya. Hinata. Her memories fluttered into her head, just like Sakura who gripped her hand, remembering the boy who had spoken the exact same words. Sasuke had now sheathed his sword and crossed his arms, glaring at the situation. Hinata looked briefly at Tsunade but her face was impassive. Hinata watched as Red suddenly froze and then fell down to his knees. She almost ran to him but stopped when he yelled at Jiraiya. Conversely, Jiraiya was furious, saying, "You idiot." Red gave a little flinch. Jiraiya shifted her gait. "I told you. I warned you against going to the 4th level, but you disobeyed me completely." Red shook his head and got up, saying, "It was under control. Not even vitals were our goal." "One strike," Jiraiya said, lifting one finger and moving in Red's direction. Sasuke would have suffered severe burns with only one nick. "He's strong," Red said, crossing his arms. "I previously informed you." With a shake of his head, Jiraiya said, "Your faith will be the death of me." "You're already old," Red mocked. With the back of the head smack, Jiraiya said to Red, "Not that old to whoop your ass." Red complained in any case. "Anyway, are we done?" Red sounded almost hopeful that Jiraiya would decline. "We're done," Jiraiya glared at him. "That seems sufficient to me. Additionally, don't you have anyone to show your respects to?" After pausing, Red nodded. "Sarutobi, yeah, where was he buried?" When Hinata could take it no more, she moved to face Red and said, "Red, Red, she said softly, you promised me to tell me who you were and how you know. Hinata's voice began to break. Red turned to face her and bowed his head as if he were being approached by a noble. Now that Sasuke and Sakura had moved in close, Tsunade was standing next to Jiraiya, and both of them were staring at Red. Red glanced up at Hinata, then at Jiraiya, who shrugged. Red gave a nod, saying, Kira. Sama. Sakura and Sasuke stopped breathing, and Tsunade's hands clenched into fists as she glared at Jiraiya instead of Red. After coming to terms with his shock, Sasuke stepped forward and said, tell me. Red gave Sasuke a sidelong glance but remained silent as Sasuke made his demand. Once more, Sasuke cried out, tell me, where is Kira? Let me know. Are you a Kira? Red remained silent and seemed to be looking down for the right words. Hinata stepped forward, saying, please tell me, Red. I am not Kira, Red sighed. Red looked up, reached for his hood, pulled it back, and showed off his oddly colored hair and eyes. He turned to face Hinata, his white hair blowing in the breeze, and his crimson eyes. Kira is my older brother. Location unknown. Red's elder brother and mentor were having tea at a table when he heard footsteps behind him. The chakra seemed familiar. Hello, Leaf. Red paused. Leaf stepped in, a cloak drawn around the deep scars and muscles below. Evening, Kira. He was given a cup by Kira. What is it? Blaze is wondering why you sent her student to Konoha. Kira laughed. Red may be studying under Blaze, but he is still my student. Leaf shook his head, saying, this will get you in hell. I know. That's why I did it, Kira laughed. With a sly smile, Kira turned his golden eyes to Leaf and said, I was always a troublemaker. Red is Kira's adopted brother. Those Kira traveled with and met. As Kira was exploring, she felt drawn to a community of people who only used natural energy. Kira was attuned to using natural energy by the purified Kyuubi chakra, which was more in tune with nature than human chakra. Additionally, users of natural energy are drawn to one another like magnets are. Red uses natural energy naturally from birth. He is shunned because of his unusual appearance, but Kira is drawn to him and helps him get through a difficult time. He is adopted by Kira, who looks after him, teaching him fighting techniques and chakra usage. After a year and a half of wandering, they finally arrive in a remote village. They get to know natural energy masters. Kira is placed under Aoi, the Wind Master, after they are taken in. Kira and Etsui are two of Aoi's apprentices. Despite their strong friendship, Aoi selects Kira over Etsui to succeed him, reasoning that Kira has a more pure heart. Kira becomes enraged and attacks Etsui after he kills Aoi. Etsui flees. Nearing its demise, the Kyuubi calls Kira to inform him of his impending demise. Kira is told by Kyuubi to release its soul so that he can survive. Encircled by the other masters, Kira grants the Kyuubi autonomy. Through this, the Kyuubi linked Kira to Aoi, who is in the afterlife. Aoi begs Kira to refrain from exacting revenge on Etsui. To keep Hinata safe, Kira dispatches Red to Konoha. After capturing Iwa, Sound, and Mizu, the Akatsuki declares war on Konoha. Kumo enters an isolationist phase, and Suna forms a tense alliance with Konoha. In order to pincer Iwa and cut off a supply route, Hinata is dispatched to the border. Sakura and Sasuke are also present because this is a significant attack. Red enters without being asked. When the Akatsuki appears, it becomes clear that they have been in charge of Onoki. When Kira enters, she kills Sasori and Deidara. Hinata reunites with Kira. Kira promises to put an end to this. He summons all of the Jinchuriki and requests the exorcism of their demons. He accomplishes this by connecting everyone's minds, Jinchuriki, Hokage, and the Masters, and employing all four Masters of the other natural energy. The last four Jinchuriki, Kumo, Taki, and Suna, agree to release their demons. The Akatsuki resort to brute force because they are unable to gather all of their demons and carry out the plan. Together with the other Masters, Kira leads the defense and thwarts the attack. When the Akatsuki reveal themselves, a full-on brawl breaks out. It is revealed that Etsui is a member of the Akatsuki and has returned. He and Kira have arguments. Kira outwits him and discloses his previous name. Etsui declares that he wishes things had been different. Kira asserts that sometimes the past isn't good enough and that we are powerless to change who we were and are not now. However, there are some things we can cling to. He is killed by Kira.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.